Hello, BookTube. I hope I'm getting this right. I'm a little bit late to my own Stevestream because I've spent so long since I was kind of forgetting the steps involved. And there is a way for you to take a massive, grievous misstep when you're doing a live stream. Instead of a big red button that says press me that YouTube could easily do, there's basically a big red button that says, you know, this way in. And if you do that, you're done. You can't be a live stream. But we're, I think, live. I'm hoping that you can hear me and that all of this is going just fine. I thought I would do a little bit of throat clearing before I go over to the chat. This cannot be a long Stevestream, even though it's an inaugural one, even though we haven't done one in a long time. Mother Nature has intervened between. I've had several catastrophes. Not only have we had a 2-week stretch where it was bone-jarringly cold here, well below 0 Fahrenheit, and not only was there the blizzard of 26, an actual historic blizzard, but also perhaps the worst natural disaster of all, a long visit from Christopher Russell. So it's been a long time, but even so, this can't be a long Stevestream. I was a little bit of a fake out, a little bit of my own version of clickbait to title this and picture it the way I did, since we will not be Stevestreaming when the State of the Union starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But nevertheless, a little bit of throat clearing. I already did a little throat clearing about the State of the Union in a video that is crawling towards upload right now, in that the State of the Union will be unprecedented because there are no guardians anymore for the President of the United States. So this will be the first State of the Union in the country's history in which every single statement is a lie. Not partisan shading, not emphasizing the good over the evil, not blowing up my own side, but a black and white, I know it's factually false and I'm saying it anyway, lie. A Jonestown style lie. And not a few. I have listened to States of the Union from presidents for a long, long time, and they all tell the occasional lie or the occasional odd shading of the facts. The whole thing will be that. The whole of it, that's just mind-boggling. Like I say all the time, if it weren't so serious, the fall of the most powerful nation in the history of the world to fascism, it would be funny. Every single thing that Trump says tonight is going to be a lie. He is going to say that the economy has never been stronger. It's never been weaker. He's going to say that ordinary everyday prices for gas and food and utilities are going down. They're going up. He's going to say that America is respected all over the world again, when it's not. We are a pariah state, thanks to him, exclusively thanks to him. So that's a little thing. I said that already on a video. Another bit of I could talk about the BAFTA awards. I could do that. That horrifying incident of the BAFTAs that has everybody opining. Everybody in the world is opining on the subject. Or I could talk about I hesitate to call it testimony, the fireside chat that Les Wexner gave to a congressional committee about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, in which he lied his face off the whole time under oath. For some reason, the congressional committee did not demand that he come to them. They went to him. And it was the most deferential committee hearing that I've ever seen. It was like the congressional questioners wanted to start every question with, again, I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Wexner. That's not how it's supposed to work. Especially if you've already been named as one of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. That's not how it's supposed to work. No one owes this old fart any deference at all. He's a massive criminal. Not only was that true, but the committee did not demand anything of him. They very gently chided him when he would tell an obvious whopper of a lie, like when he said he wasn't Epstein's friend at all. But they didn't require any documents of him. No primary sources. No, do you have visitor logs for your businesses? Do you have memorandums of visits? Do you have recordings of businesses, of any conversations that you have with Epstein? You certainly do. He certainly does. They didn't ask. They didn't even ask him to produce such things. I could talk about that as well, because that story, combined with the story of the FBI's incompetent leader, Kash Patel, spasming with an Olympic team and squirting alcohol all over himself when there are a lot of more important things for him to be doing, acting like a moron, just acting like a fool. Not even a question of the film footage of him with the Olympic team was not even a question of him being incompetent. Although him even being there, let alone partying the way he was, is definitely visual in demonstration of incompetence. It was also just weird. It was just so dumb, foolish way for a grown man to behave. Whether he's the leader of the FBI or not. Anyway, I could talk about all those things, but the main throat clearing that I want to do is just to remind you all of the absolute abject misery of BookTube. Just how horrible it is here. I mean, everyone's in it for the money. No one cares about books. Everyone lies about what they read. Everyone's only obsessing about their metrics. It's just awful. It's just this awful crack cocaine addiction experience that we all have, where we can't stop, but we hate it. So you look at the whole landscape of our lives. We've got the loved ones, we've got the distant cousins, we've got the friends, maybe housemates and whatnot. We've got maybe teachers or coworkers, and there's levels of light on all of those. And then on that landscape, there's this patch of consecrated, roiling darkness of absolute contempt and hatred. And that is BookTube. That's the part of our life that is BookTube, where it's awful to watch. Everyone's lying. Everyone's in it for the money, and if they aren't in it if they say they're not in it for the money, they're lying, or propounding. They might be propounding from a spot of moral blindness, moral privilege. Everyone who's making videos is in it for the money, and everyone who's watching is just lying to each other and to the creators of videos. Just this horrible, unmitigatedly negative, awful experience that is BookTube. I, of course, wanted to vent a little about that, right? Because we all watch BookTube, and a lot of us make BookTube videos, but God, do we hate it. It is just the worst. Everyone's lying. Everyone's chasing the algorithm. No one's genuine. It's just awful. So I thought I would commiserate with you, since you're on BookTube right now, that I hear that. I definitely hear that. I hate BookTube more than anything that I've ever hated in my life. I hate BookTube more than I hate the hordes of Genghis Khan or the ravages of the Nazis. It's worse than anything that's ever existed. It's the worst single thing that has ever existed in the history of humanity. I would love nothing better than to stop making videos and send each and every one of you a personalized box of live scorpions, because that's just the kind of pit of iniquity that BookTube is. And you will hear that regularly from booktubers who are perfectly happy to make videos like that instead of simply, walking away from BookTube. If it's that bad, if it's absolutely horrible with no rays of sunlight to alleviate it at all, you would think that if you felt that way, you would walk away and you would stop making videos and telling other people that it's like that. But I had to start off the chat by commiserating you about how horrible this is. What a horrible experience this is. Just a horrible thing that has happened to all of our lives, and some of us have been doing it for a decade. So anyway, now that we've got all those out of the way, we've got the horrible Kash Patel, we've got Les Wexner, who is apparently going to go scot-free. Boy, oh boy, when John Ossoff, the second hottest man in American politics, when John Ossoff made mention of an Epstein class, boy, oh boy, he might not have known that he was coining a phrase, but boy, oh boy, was he right. Because Les Wexner, when he was talking to this congressional committee, he was talking in the completely complacent tones, not of an old man, but of an old man who knows he's not ever going to be touched. Amazingly, when old men, young men, and everyone in between is being touched in every other country that had anything to do with this intercontinental sex slave ring. Whereas most of the people that have been touched by this and brought down by this in other countries were not classified by the FBI as a co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, whereas Les Wexner was. He's as guilty as the day is long. He is, aside from maybe Donald Trump, the guiltiest person who is alive today that had anything to do with that ring. And the Congress paid him a courtesy call. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, if it's not too much trouble, Could I ask you another question that you're obviously going to lie about? Anyway, so as you can see, I have a number of bees in my bonnet, but that's probably true for you too. I think if I'm reading this correctly, we have 6 people here. So let's go over to the chat. Since this can't be long, let's go over to the chat and see what's on everybody's mind. So we start off with Wine and Calzones, who says, I'll be there. Okay, that must mean this live stream. Michael Lombardo says, are you live streaming during the State of the Union? Will the justices get a scolding? I will not be live streaming. We are not going to go that long. No way. No way. Everyone knows that you can't talk that long on BookTube without downing gallons of water, spilling it over your mouth. Excuse me. I just... And who would want to spend that much time on BookTube anyway? This hateful, hateful platform that is full of evil, money-grubbing liars. But yes, the justices will get a scolding, because the scolding that they got originally in a slushy, sounds like death address, which is what this will be as well. He will be pumped full of drugs to be even remotely coherent this late in the day. He'll be pumped full of drugs. But even so, slurping, and he'll be barely controlling his saliva. And his voice is ready and peaked, like a very old man on the edge of death. Where he's going to stay for a good long time. And the reason that the justices will get a scolding is because the first time he scolded them did not yield the result that he wanted, which is that one or all of them die. They didn't yield the right result. So he has to keep doing it until he gets the right response. Until at the very least, if they don't die, at the very least, he needs some of his cult followers to put a gallows with a hangman's noose on their driveway. That hasn't happened yet. Michael Lombardo, I'm going to pre-show with CPL Radio. Yes, CPL Radio's Books of the Week is back. My long-suffering producer, Jeff, posted a new episode today. I saw that it was up. It came up in my feed before I had any kind of notice, and so I just watched it as a video and was really struck by how good it is. I know that sounds odd since I'm involved in it, but it is really entertaining stuff. It's entertaining without being completely dumb. My producer does his best, but it's not completely dumb. It's genuinely funny in a way that a great team up is. I really liked it. I really enjoyed the hour, the episode that I saw. Then we have Sean Patrick. Hi, Steve. I'm reading the Odyssey first time, and I was surprised how melancholy Odysseus' trip to Hades made me feel. Seeing our old friends from the Iliad and the Afterlife was like a gut punch. Yeah, especially since in the Odyssey you don't know really what it's like. You know for sure that it's not pleasant. That it gives you an insight into how the ancient Greeks thought about whatever kind of survival you have. There were whole levels of it. Because there's also the Elysium Fields, right, where we may see the great Achilles, whom we knew. Sean Patrick is back. Steve, has the term doggerel always had a negative connotation in regards to writing? Yes, although not with me. Alex Archives says, the question is, will Erica Kirk be in attendance for the Stevestream? No, she won't be. I don't know if she'll be in attendance at the State of the Union. There'll be gimmick attendees. There always are. But there'll be a lot of people who won't be there. A lot of people are saying that enough is enough. Partisan politics is bad enough, but I'm not going to go to a State of the Union with someone who is going to lie every single sentence out of his mouth. Nothing he says is going to be true. Nothing. He's going to talk about all the wars he stopped when he's starting them. He's going to talk about all the prices he brought down when they're going up. But also, a lot of people are saying, a lot of other people who otherwise have attended are saying, even with all the lying, I'm not going to go if there's a chance that he is protecting pedophiles. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go and sit in attendance at this guy. Gandhi says, sad news about Robert Carradine. I enjoyed his performance in Coming Home. Eerie that his ending is in some way mirrored the movie role. I don't know the details. Hagus Sander Sinopeus, still reading the Side Sticker Genji, which with accoutrements. I get the exact feeling as with the Lord of the Rings, a mix of the foreign and the utterly familiar. It may be the Side Stickers doing, or Shikibu's lovely portrait paintings. I think it's probably a lot of both. Thomas says hilarious, but does not elaborate. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know you're not much of a Redford guy, but it would warm my heart if I knew you liked Jeremiah Johnson. Your heart's going to need a little bit of stimulation because I don't. There's some Redford movies that I like. Sometimes the movie itself is so strong that it really doesn't matter. But so much of what he did in his early career, I think he grew into a presence on screen that wasn't just beautiful. But so many of those early appearances, oh God, there's just no substance to them at all. Let's see here. Clarence Beek says, thankfully, here we are a good captain, well seasoned. Dressy Crooner says, hey, Steve, feel free to gloat, but I reread Ulysses' second read, and I'm afraid the magic has faded, and I was drowning in self-indulgence and pretentiousness. Well, maybe don't read it again. Steve is always right. Thomas Gerakis, NP, we can hear you. We are here, but rest assured you are not Horton about to be boiled. It's a Dr. Seuss reference. Andrew says, despite your indifference to most rock biographies, do you think you'll take a look at Bob Spitz's latest On the Stones? I will, absolutely, because his book on the Beatles is great. His book on the Beatles broke through my indifference. His book on the Beatles is so fantastic. I often think I should have a print copy here. Dressy Crooner says, also wasted a week reading Mill on the Floss, Eliot's first literary disaster. Absolutely mind-numbing. Just started the Iliad, though. It's brilliant. Yeah, I'm a big fan of George Eliot, but not of everything. DZGIN says, reading Alex Toth's Zorro and loving it. Do you have some similar recommendations? I don't know what part of it would be similar, but I'm glad you liked it. Wish I had a collected version of that. Thomas says, O'Donoghue for Prez, maybe? Not in a million years. No, there's not going to be any other presidents. I'm not part of the Trump family. Dressy Crooner says, I saw an old video you did with Hannah, and you espoused a more positive view of Henry James than you have more recently. How and why have your views of him become more negative? Okay, the how and why part is starting to sound a lot less like a chat question than an essay question on which I will be graded. So we want to be careful about that. But my opinions haven't changed. I have complex opinions about Henry James. I am aware of all the brilliance, but I'm also aware of a lot of the, as mentioned above, self-indulgence. Jenny Parks says, hey guys, sorry I'm late, Steve. I beg your forgiveness. Oh, the chat jumped. I'm not wroth with you, but the chat is. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know you don't ramble in the wild anymore, but the rise of tick-borne Lyme disease has absolutely ruined warm weather outdoor adventures for a lot of people. I didn't even know that. Has tick-borne Lyme disease been on the rise? I didn't even know that. Yeah, because we don't anymore. Partly that was situational, and I feel a little bit bad about that. All summer long, last summer, the closest entrance to there's this big nature preserve about 2 minutes from my front door, and the closest entrance to it was being completely remodeled, so it was closed, and there were earth movers and workers and whatnot. So if I wanted to bring the bean there and wander around, we would have had to go around the long way, and it's not a long way. It's not long. I just didn't do it. Plus, as she gets older, those of you who are wondering, she's right here next to me. See, want to say hi to your fans, baby? Huh? What you doing? Huh? How's the baby? No. She increasingly is perfectly happy with a stroll around the neighborhood or the extended neighborhood, but not any kind of ground covering stuff. So we have not had to worry about it, but I'll keep that in mind. Alan says, this is painful. No idea what you mean by that. Gandhi says, YouTube will not yet let you use the word unaliving. I would not use the word unaliving anyway, since I am not a mewling coward. Gandhi says, Martin Short's daughter, referring to my above comment. Okay, but I don't know what your above comment was. Boy, we're all out of practice here, right? I was out of practice finding the right buttons to hit, and you're out of practice in making the right kinds of comments for a chat. Guys, fam. Westfield Space Academy. Hi, Steve. You have praised Orlando Furioso. Do you also recommend Boyardo's Orlando Innamorato? I do recommend it, but it's nothing the same at all. Orlando Furioso is playful, and Orlando Innamorato is not. So it's not the same experience at all. It's wonderful in its own right, but it's wonderful in its own right. I have never read a good English translation. I've read 3 or English translations. I've never read a good one, or one that really even did more than it was just wooden. So Thomas says, you rant and slap us silly as booktube gripers, and we want more. So much better than good Lord, this is not English at all. All right, so we're all out of practice. Alan says, what's these purple crown things? I know, aren't they awful? They're a new thing from YouTube to increase the competition among comment leavers. So the algorithm keeps track of who's leaving the comments and gives a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3 spot. Utterly ridiculous. You try to ignore them. I'm trying to ignore them. Morgan says, do you think you can best/rival Stephen Colbert's Tolkien knowledge? He's always touted as a scholar and does seem it, but makes me think whether Steve is his true challenger. Is that some sort of joke? Is that a joke? I have heard Stephen Colbert get as much wrong about Tolkien as get right off the top of his head. His knowledge of Tolkien is not just surpassed by mine, but completely eclipsed by mine. So I feel no compunction about saying that at all. Barcode says, hi, Steve. What would you say is the closest English language version of something like Montaigne's essays? Does such a thing exist, or is it simply unparalleled? It's largely unparalleled. I know there's a voice coming from hell, coming up from hell, saying, what about mine? That voice would belong to Gore Vidal. I'm sure that he would say United States is the equivalent in English, but I don't know. I don't know. Dylan says, hi, Steve. I recently read my late grandfather's favorite book and was pleasantly surprised to find out he picked up a few of his turns of phrase from it. Sometimes our solitary habit feels less so. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's true of friendships, too. If you have a good, solid friendship where you have the good grace to be ashamed of your friend, their vocalisms will rub off on you. And sometimes, not to be too melancholy, but sometimes they'll be long gone. They'll have long since shuffled off this mortal coil, and you'll still be saying things they used to say. Let's see here. Okay. A handle in Hebrew. So, Steve, have you ever visited here in Israel? Okay. Well, it's not a have you read question, although they're surely coming since we're all out of practice. But it is a have you ever visited question, which is almost as bad. But maybe the person who knows who they are, one person out of every 500,000 knows Hebrew. So no, what am I saying? One person out of every 550 million knows Hebrew. Anyway, yes, I have been to Israel many, many times. I have not been to Australia and New Guinea. Okay. So if you have a question about have you ever been somewhere, and the somewhere isn't Australia and New Guinea, then the answer is yes. So you don't need to ask the question, right? If the answer is yes, unless it's those two things. If I had a dime for every time I have said that to someone and they said, no, what? Have you been to Wiesbaden? What did I just say? Anyway, Jenny Park says, Steve has been everywhere, including your back garden. Right, I have been everywhere, including where you're asking the question, the actual block where you're asking the question. Alexandros says, Steve, can you read faster and read without sub-vocalizing better when you use your finger or a pointer? Boy, I know there's a group of people who just love the whole a line, like a ruler on the page or something like that. I've never seen the benefit at all. I don't use anything like that myself. I will use my finger when I'm doing a read aloud on my channel, whether it's Trollop or the Bible or what else. I will use my finger there just so I don't just accidentally repeat the same thing, but I don't use anything like that to read. Edward Gibbons says, hi, Steve. Hope the reading is as joyous as ever. What is your opinion of Toynbee's study of history? I like it. It's awful windy. Cole DeFornia says, where to start with Thomas Mann? It depends on what kind of a reader you are. If your reading muscles are in excellent shape and you don't mind big books, then start with Buddenbrooks or even Magic Mountain. But he also wrote Death in Venice, so you could read something shorter that's also brilliant. The Hebrew name is back. Steve, which do you prefer reading? Which do you prefer reading for pleasure? 1001 Arabian Nights or the Decameron? The Decameron, hands down. No, the chat jumped again. Boy, the chat is awful jumpy. Maybe it wants me to settle in and cover the State of the Union live. We're not going to do that, though. Thomas says, can you rank Evelyn Waugh's first few novels? Interested here? Yes, I probably can. If I sat down and wrote a team paper about it, I probably could rank them. Although probably I wouldn't, because that's not the way I think of books. Cosmic Gaze says, Steve, do you find it irritating the Library of America has not done a collection of Samuel Adams' writings? Why do you think they have neglected him? I don't find it irritating. The work that they do is so great anyway. And a lot of people don't think, I mean, first of all, we don't have but a fraction of what he wrote. He destroyed a lot of what he wrote. But a lot of people don't think about him at all. They think there was only one Adams, which was actually an opinion that was had at the time, only it was about him. No one remembered John Adams at all. They thought when the king and his ministers talked about the dangerous Adams, they were talking about Samuel, not John. Maybe they will someday, though. You never know. JLU, how do you feel about Herman Wouk? I'm reading Youngblood Hawk and have some mixed feelings. I generally like him. I bet I understand your mixed feelings on Youngblood Hawk. It is not the boisterous, unambiguous success that he thought it was. But he wrote a lot of other things too that are much more, like for instance, the Caine Mutiny is much more successful than Youngblood Hawk. Alexandro says, which is the better, Oxford volume, Roman Britain by Collingsworth, or Roman Britain by Solway? The Solway, but they're both really good. Right, we're wandering towards Factboy questions quite a bit here. We are all out of practice. We clearly need to do Stevestream every night. After all, you've got plenty of reading time, right? Although I can't tell what the attendance is here. I'm not asking why anyone would do this. I don't know why anyone watches my channel. I don't know why anyone would watch a live stream. But I also can't figure out the numbers. It looks like there are 14 people here, but the chat seems like more than that. Anyway, Must Read More says, booktubing, can't stand reading. I'm just here for the money and the fame. Clearly right. Booktube is this horrible, horrible thing, an unmitigatedly negative thing. It hurts your reading. It hurts the world of literature itself. It hurts you personally. It hurts all your friends. The way I'm going to tell you this is to make a video about it. Alan says, oh, no, wait. Hannah's Books is here. Oh, Must Read More and Hannah's Books back to back. Very nice. BookTube royalty. I've only read some of Henry James. Which ones should I avoid? Well, the stereotypical answer to that question involves the means of production. It involves the way Henry James wrote his books. Where up to a certain period, very discrete period, he documented every breath he took, so we know all the details of it. Up until a certain point, he wrote his books. And after that point, he dictated them, and they balloon in verbosity. Now, if you love his verbosity, as some people do, then something like A Golden Bowl, you're just going to love. You're going to be in seventh heaven. So really, it's which Henry James you like, and then figure out the dividing line, where on the dividing line you want to go. The earlier, tighter, more conventional novels, or the later, more surreal things where 2 solid paragraphs of description about something can leave you wondering what the something is. Alan says, what's your opinion on the BAFTA thing? I'm pretty sure that my opinion on the BAFTA thing would offend people that I don't want to offend. You're all my friends. I don't want to offend anybody. My opinion on the BAFTA thing goes much deeper than just the thing itself. And I understand and I totally agree with the pointed criticisms made of the BBC, who left that in when they edited out people expressing their solidarity for Palestine, for instance. They had the ability to avoid it. They had the ability to avoid the whole thing happening, and they didn't do it. As to the thing itself, I have rather antediluvian, old-fashioned, grandpa's an embarrassment opinions on the subject. Coldifornia says, what board games do you like? Typically, not any. I really like chess. I really, really like chess. Wish I had a chess partner. But most board games, no. I don't have a long, positive history with them. And I wouldn't play any of them now anyway. I mean, if I had a group of friends who would come over here, well, it would be for wine and calzones and bookish conversation. We wouldn't break out a board game. Albert says, is there a backstory as to why your Trump preamble, racist, fascist, etc., ends so emphatically with "from Queens," as if that were his worst? No, I don't mean it that way. I've already been approached by James on the subject of how this shouldn't be. I shouldn't be using that as in the list of his offenses. No, it's more along the lines of to puncture the bubble of his cult, who believe that he is from America. They believe that he is the embodiment of America, that he is a mystical being. They didn't have any origin on the earthly plane. That's the main reason. I've stopped saying it. I've stopped saying that part. I try to. The Hebrew handle is back. Steve, I want to read Churchill's own book on the Second World War, but I'm wondering how historically accurate it is. Can you help me with that, please? It's pretty accurate, and it's pretty good. I have been making a project out of rereading the massive works that came out of the Second World War, something of an informal project. And Churchill is high on the list. Actually, rereading all of Churchill just in general, but especially his long series on the Second World War. I am waiting to get the books. I'm waiting to piecemeal find the books. I have volume 1 and volume 2. So I'm dying to find out how the whole story ends and find out who wins. But it is so incredible to have a work like that by one of the foremost heads of state during the conflict that is so stirringly readable. Now, I know there's a lot of documentation, a long history of how much or how little involved Churchill was with the actual drafting and writing of the book, but he certainly polished it. And a lot of it, I reread it and think, there's a lot going on here. There are critical studies of this series that have never been done. Anti-Gaia says, Steve, what did you think of One Battle After Another? I bet you can guess what I thought about it. Thomas says, Steve for Prez, 2 exclamation points. Coldifornia says, is Aztec by Gary Jennings worth reading? It is. It's not as worth reading as he thought it was, for instance. And it's not as worth reading as you would guess, not only from the fact that it stays in print, but also all the sequels that it's had. It's not as good as Journeyer, or even Raptor, which will never be reprinted. It's not as good as his other big historicals. Let's see here. Coldifornia says, any recommended books about Iran-Contra? The standard stuff, the muckraking stuff that came out, I haven't read any good histories of it. Sean Patrick says, Steve, until listening to you, I'd never heard of any advanced copy. How different on average are they from the finished copy? Would it ever even be worthwhile to read for a non-reviewer? Usually they're almost identical to the finished copy, unless there's something egregious. I mean, they won't be identical in the accoutrements. They won't have the index. Usually they won't have a bibliography if the finished book has a bibliography. They won't have anything like that. If it's a novel, they won't have usually the dedication or the acknowledgments or anything like that. So we won't have the frippery like that, but the text is usually indistinguishable. It's a standard thing for the publishing industry to say, please don't quote from this. It's not the finished copy. And I think they do that mainly as a fig leaf. They mainly do it because they don't want some overeager reviewer jumping on a typo. But the key here to remember here is that an overeager reviewer shouldn't be allowed by his editor to jump on a typo anyway. It's not a book reviewer's place to point out typos, unless the book is riddled with them. Then that's not part of a book review. Any editor who was paying any attention to the copy that was coming through their fingers would stop that right away. I have never known it to be the case where I could not review an ARC because of some change that was going to happen in the finished copy. I've never known that to be true. If you're reviewing the essence of the book, if you've got your reader in mind instead of your own plumage, then you will be mentioning things that are going to be the same. Gandhi says, YouTube will not let you use certain words describing the manner of death. Sure they will. They just won't let you profit off it. So the Kyle Kolinsky, who has like 2 million subscribers and is a big presence on YouTube, when talking about some of the most horrific crimes that Epstein ever committed, has to say that young girls were raped. Because that doesn't demean them. Because he's worried that he might get a few dollars less on that video. Ridiculous. The Hebrew handle is back. Steve, who do you generally loathe/find more annoying, the far left or the far right? Well, once upon a time, 10 years ago, more than that, a little more than that. I would have said the balance was about even, because in their own ways, they are both pretty awful and totally non-representative. All of us are not there. We're not in either place. I know nobody, almost nobody, who is anywhere near either of those extremes. But now there is no comparison at all. now the far right executes people in the street. Now the far right is protecting a gigantic international child sex trafficking ring. And you can't be far right without doing that. That's you if you do that. So now there's no comparison. The far left is very, very annoying, and they would be just as bad if they had power. But there's no comparison, I don't think. Jovan says, I will hopefully visit the Brattle in August. If you see a huge Montenegrin tumbling on the outside lot, just know it's me. Well, if you see me there, of course, you could feel free to coordinate with me ahead of time. I'm assuming that it won't be blizzarding in August. But if you see me there, feel free to come right up and say hello. I am not a mewling introvert. I am extremely extroverted. I was raised and socialized by the most extroverted creatures in the world. Feel free to come up and say hello. We'll take a picture in front of the Brattle sign. I'll introduce you to everybody so you can hear them make fun of me. Way too often I hear from the Brattle staff that once I leave, somebody comes up to them and says, was that Steve Donahue? Well, don't do that. Come and say hi to me. Pump up my ego in real time. Although a huge Montenegrin, that sounds really romantic anyway. Gandhi says, best biography of T.S. Eliot, the 2-volume one. What's his name? The young Eliot and then Eliot After the Wasteland. I'm never going to remember the name, and I can't. I doubt that I can spot it on the shelf. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. It was a 2-volume one. It's great. Absolutely. There's recent, and it's absolutely great. No, blows every other competitor away. Although that was a factoid question. That was just pushing A13. And if the machine, if your candy grape nuts stop, then you're going to shake the machine until they fall loose. But that's okay. We're all friends here. California says, is Len Dayton worth reading? Is Bomber any good? Oh my God, yes. Len Dayton is very much worth reading. The more I revisit him. And Bomber is terrific. Absolutely terrific. Fiction and nonfiction. Oh my, this could be the year for Len Dayton for me. Len Dayton and a few other authors. Dressy Crooner says, I have loved the Masada miniseries since I nagged my dad to buy the DVD back when I was 11. So happy you are a fellow Masada appreciator. I doubt any other 26-year-old has seen it. Well, keep in mind, I am 28. So I've got 2 years on a 26-year-old. And what a series. Oh my God. David Murphy actually succeeded in a couple of his visits in finding some longer clips of it that were oddly cut on the screen, obviously to avoid copyright or whatnot. So I got to show him some of it, but I've never sat with him for the end of it. I haven't seen the end of it since I saw it on TV, when I had a TV in the room, for Pete's sake. Or the famous catapult scene. I haven't seen that in 35 years. At the end, we cannot keep doing this. We are legionaries. We are not barbarians. Oh my. I was fat when I came to this country. He posts fat. And if I don't get out of here soon, there'll be nothing left of me at all. Or when Silva is coming back to his legion because he has made his peace with Vespasian, he has managed to get his command back, and the 2 turncoats on his staff, one of them says to the other, I had a feeling. Or probably my favorite line of all in the whole thing. I mean, the conversation between Peter O'Toole, the conversations between O'Toole and Peter Strauss are great. They're some of the best TV that's ever been written. But probably my favorite throwaway line is one that I remember all the time. And when you get older, you'll remember it too. When the Roman legion takes possession of an Essene farm. So the Essenes are being expelled. That's why they are going to end up on Masada with all the zealots. And the leader of the Essene says that no Caesar before you has ever dared to do this. And the centurion says, if you live long enough, you see everything. And the Essene looks at him and says, yes, centurion, you speak the truth. Oh, man. I think about that at least once a week. But anyway, Jovan says, I read Maria Reynes's Bolivar biography on your recommendation. I loved it. Really good book. Wish I could find a copy. Am I blurbed on the paperback? I don't even know if I am. But when I finished the book, I couldn't help but wonder about your opinion on the man. Yeah, pretty complex, right? Because when you finish the book, you also are wondering, well, okay, the size of the accomplishments, the gigantic nature of the aura, certainly that I get. But what about the man himself? And I agree. I don't think there was a whole lot there to be admired. But Sean Patrick says, Steve, what's the best book on Ted Kennedy and the Chappaquiddick incident? Well, I wrote about a newer, like 5 years old, for the Vineyard Gazette. But really, it's senatorial privilege. Really, that is the one to get. I mean, it's exhaustive. There really isn't any. The later book that I wrote about for the Gazette, I did it just, my editor asked me to, and I thought, writing about Chappaquiddick for the Vineyard Gazette, when are you ever going to get another chance to do that? So I did that, and that was a novel theory, but really there is no doubt as to what happened. So you stick with a great big book called Senatorial Privilege, which I don't have a copy of. Dead Romans, Dead Kennedys, and Dogs. I don't have a copy of Senatorial Privilege. Haven't seen a hardcover out in the wild in forever. Istradinumitru. God helps. Steve, what was your experience visiting Moldova? Very good. Very good. We're learning. We're getting back in the saddle. You're not asking me if I've been there. But I didn't. I think I went right through it. I don't think I spent any time there to have any experiences. Steve Bronstein, oh no. The chat jumped as soon as I invoked your name. Let's go back to you. At least I know who you are. Let's go back. It seems to me there's more than 18 people here. I'm probably reading that wrong. Let's go back to where you were. God help us. There we go. Steve, did you hear Carlson weaponizing anti-Semitism in his interview with Huckabee and yet making it tricky to call him out for it given the statements from the other side? What an interview. What an interview. Tucker Carlson is such a piece of slime. And yet people have to refer to that interview because Mike Huckabee stepping on rakes the whole time. Because Mike Huckabee is so dumb. And no matter how much I hate Tucker Carlson, and boy, oh boy, do I hate him. There's not a genuine bone in his body. Even so, he's not dumb. Whereas Huckabee is so stupid to think that he might, in some alternate reality, have been president. Stephen Bronstein said, also couldn't help but notice Carlson wouldn't have dared to pull questions and attitudes like that with Putin. No. Well, he's being paid a lot of money every month by the Russians. So, no, he's not going to risk that. That reading guy says, whoa, when did this start? I don't know. When did we start? Okay, the dashboard here says 45 minutes ago. DZIG says, when I mentioned Zorro, I was thinking some adventure / hero of the people without superpowers. Type of comic or books, can you recommend something like that? Now, why would I do such a thing when I think such characters are lame? They are lame. Of course, you mentioned Alex Toth, so I can't help but recommend The Spirit by Will Eisner. And those have been very nicely, very beautifully collected in various volumes, so they might appeal. Geese Howard says, hey, Steve, is Osamu Dazai Dude Bro lit? Pretty much. California says, are there any recommended collected works of war correspondence? I've been reading Once There Was a War by Steinbeck, per your recommendation. Try the Library of America volumes. They're really, really good. Really, a lot of life went into them. Steve, have you ever shot a gun? If so, do you remember which type it was? I've never shot a gun. No. Millicent says, would you please turn on the CC? Thank you. No idea how to do that. Jovan says, I went to a speed reading course when I was a kid. They taught us the pointer method. It did help me read faster, but it made reading a sort of manual labor. I can imagine. So it did make you read faster, just following along like that. I've seen people absolutely swear by like a ruler where they're going like that. So they're not actually moving their hands, but they're not taking it off the page. That's wild. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I asked earlier if that is the mole from The Wind in the Willows behind you. Yes, it is. That is Mr. Mole. The chat jumped when you got to this question, so if you already answered, my apologies. No, that is Mole, who is reading. He has Yeats in his pocket. He has a stack of books there. They all have names on them, and he is reading a book with a mouse coming out of his teapot. That is from a used bookstore that used to exist in Boston called the Brandeis Bookstall. This is just this little room with a little bathroom attached to it, down one flight of steps from a street off Coolidge Corner. Run just an outlining charity from Brandeis University that was just run by these two little old ladies. Just sat there and griped all day long. A great little used bookstore, just one room. They had far fewer books than I do. But whenever I would make a run to Coolidge Corner, I would always go there. And I always find something. Because the books were just donated in boxes outside. So you get all sorts of stuff. And I was going there for years and years. The two old ladies that ran it were so funny. They didn't know they were funny, but they were so funny. And this was on the wall. That poster was on the door of the bathroom, not with a frame, just the poster tacked to the door of the bathroom. And I was going there for years and years and years. One day I just decided to ask. I went up to them and said, I had my books and I was paying, and I said, is that poster on the wall of the bathroom for sale? And one of the old ladies said, kid, everything here is for sale. And they sold it to me for like $1.50. I rolled it up and brought it home and had it framed. And boy, oh boy, am I glad I did, because I went back months later and there was no bookstore there anymore. Maybe they got increased rent or something like that, or Brandeis pulled the plug on them, but they weren't there anymore. But anyway, Gan says, any opinions on the Hollander's translation of Dante? I don't particularly like it. Jenny Park says 139 people according to my screen. Good Lord, that can't be true. How could 139 people all have such little judgment? That reading guy says, hey, fact boy, why is my channel better than yours? Well, that's not a fact. That would be an opinion. In this case, it's a delusion. David Hume says, Steve every night. Yes, please. Yes, a Stevestream every night. Cosmic Ace says, Steve, do you agree with my view that Americans are largely ignorant of American history? I attribute this to people getting their info from talking heads or church groups. I do agree with you completely. Americans are mostly completely ignorant of their history. But I don't know about talking heads and church groups. I think it might also have to do with the fact that in any American university, the easiest major to get is an education major. You usually need a 2.0 grade point average to qualify. If you want to get a degree out of your college and you're not all that picky and you're also dumb, that's where you're going to go. I think that America is going on its third generation where teachers just are not equipped. They just are not academically equipped for their job. But whatever the reason is, it's definitely true. My old friend Deb and I used to work in a bookstore together, and I told her once upon a time, it's much worse than you think it is. And she said, oh, no, it's not. People know these things. I said, all right, well, there's an easy way to demonstrate it. I'll give you 10 questions. I'll write them down on a piece of paper. You just ask our coworkers at random these 10 questions. Question number 1, true or false? Is America over 100 years old? Question number 2, true or false? World War II is currently being fought. And she was laughing at the questions, but she was horrified by the results. Steve, I want to live in America, but I don't know where exactly. What place can you recommend? Absolute insanity. Why? No, you should not live in America. You should not even visit America. Absolute insanity. That is absolute insanity. Why would you even think that? This country has fallen to fascism. Roving bands of masked thugs patrol the streets and kill people at random. There are concentration camps on American soil, all of which are being outfitted with incinerators, and more on the way. There is no more representative democracy here. You are not free here. And if you visit, if you are not born here, you have a target on your back from minute one. That is insane. You would be insane to visit, much less to want to live here. Don't do it. That is not hyperbole. Don't do it. That would be an insane decision. That would be the exact equivalent of you living in France and deciding that you really feel like moving to Germany in 1933. Any time traveler would come to you, grab you by the lapel, and say, you are not doing that. No matter how attractive the beer gardens look, you're not doing that. Same thing here. Absolutely, you should get that idea out of your head. That's to say nothing of the fact that this is a country soaked in blood. There's no event, no hockey game, no mall, no outside music concert where you aren't in constant danger of being shot by a gunman. Crazy. It would be a crazy thing to do. Steve Bronstein says, have you been watching any of the I've Had It podcast? I get a real kick out of Jennifer Welch. I realize they're likely delusional, but it's still cathartic for me. I would say that pretty much sums up the I Have Had It podcast as being both delusional and cathartic. I would say that pretty much sums it up. They would probably agree with that. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I've had dogs who had gotten into real, actual fights. An old timer told me the safest way to break it up is to grab one by the tail if you can and pull them straight out of the fight. Is he wrong? Well, oddly enough, I would not be a person to ask this to. That seems to me like a bad idea, since the dog that you are pulling on would then be vulnerable to every other dog. It seems like you would be condemning that dog, whichever dog you picked, to a savage mauling or death. It might end the fight. If you're talking about a fight between only two dogs and you take the side of one against the other, that doesn't seem fair to me. But I've never been in that situation. Whether you believe it or not, because we all hate BookTube, and BookTube's full of liars, and everybody's playing the algorithm, and no one's telling the truth about anything. But I have never seen a dog fight where I could not just tell the combatants to stop. There isn't a dog on earth who's not going to obey. Isn't now, never has been, never will be. So I've never needed to figure out a way to do it. With you, I would say don't get involved. It's really dangerous. Dogs don't fight each other the way they fight humans. There's a level of power there that humans don't suspect at all. You could get seriously hurt. Let's see here. Jenny Park says, I don't know if it makes you proud, Steve, but I just restarted Physical Library. And I started with the first 5 Meg books, Dracula and Discworld. I did get more and now have a book buying problem. You started a Physical Library. Well, I wouldn't have suggested all 5 books. I mean, honestly, just one will give you a good taste for what you're in for. But you have a nice bookshelf. Well, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. You should send me a picture of your inaugural bookshelf. Thomas says, I was commenting hilarious because of the press briefing room picture you had on screen. I prefer you as president over WH press secretary myself. Well, I, of course, would be preferable to anybody in the Trump regime. Gandhi says, I'm struggling with Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain, about 100 pages in. Do you get the sense that it's the translation you're struggling with, or maybe the book? Because if it's the translation, aren't there 2 translations that exist in English? At the moment, 2 that are readily available. I could be wrong about that. But if you get the sense that it's the book, remember, stop. 100 pages with fairness and open mind and due diligence is enough. You don't have unlimited reading time, so you should stop. Steve, what are your favorite fragrances, perfumes? I don't like, good Lord. I don't like any fragrances or perfumes. My sense of smell is not perfunctory the way yours is. And if it's not perfunctory, you would be amazed what any fragrance or perfume actually smells like. You'd be amazed how horrible they all smell. So I'm not a fan of any of them. Dylan says, my first Henry James was The Turn of the Screw, which I believe was the first book he dictated. And whilst I liked it, had I not known his earlier work was less verbose, I probably would have skipped them. Sean Patrick says, Steve, another dog question. My one dog is obsessed with chewing rawhides. I get him high quality ones, but a lot of people said they are bad for dogs. What are your thoughts? I don't know why they'd be bad for your dog. The obsession is bad, not the rides themselves. I don't like when owners let their dogs just have an obsession, whether it's a ball dog or a particular chewy toy or whatever. I realize that sometimes you can't avoid it and you don't want to be mean, but I don't know that it would be harmful to your dog. No. Moth says, Steve, I've just started to get into Star Trek this year, but I'm a bit overwhelmed with all the novels. Yeah, quite a few of them. Not anymore. I noticed that no one's even proposing to do a Starfleet Academy novel. It almost made me want to do one myself for fanfiction.net. Fanfiction.net does not have anyone writing about Starfleet Academy when the thing it's 7 episodes long. That's usually plenty of time. Star Trek Enterprise, when it was only 1 episode long, had 100 stories on fanfiction.net. I don't think anyone cares about Starfleet Academy, so I automatically thought, well, they don't care about it because it's so awful. But could you tell a good Starfleet Academy story? And I think you could. I think you easily could. But you want to know how I should tackle them, publication order. The thing about the original Star Trek, where there are the most novels, is that the publication order actually extends over a period of time when the franchise itself was changing. So the earliest novels are not vetted by lawyers. They are not vetted by the corporation that owns Star Trek, the IP. And then they get more and more vetted as they go along. So they can be radically different. I mean, there are recommendations you could make. I've made some videos that recommend really good Star Trek novels. It would depend. First, we would want to pick which franchise you're liking. You're brand new to Star Trek. So have you landed on a particular franchise, one particular iteration of the show, probably the Next Generation? If that's true, then you're going to want to skip the first year of Next Generation. The first year of them are just terrible. They were all written before the show aired. But there are really good ones that you could do. And same thing with the original series. There are really good ones and then really bad ones. And then there are quite a few Deep Space Nine, and there are a relative handful of Voyager, almost no Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise. I think there are at most 25 of them. So it would depend on what cast you want to read about. Definitely not publication order, I would say. Alan says, with your interest in serial killers last year, any thoughts on Let By? No. Don't even know actually what that is. But my interest in serial killers was largely compelled by money. And I am getting strong feelings. I'm being more and more warned that is going to happen again in 2026. And honestly, in 2026, I don't know where I will find the time. I won't turn it down because the money will be good. But I don't know where I will have to work it in. I don't know where. I don't know how I will do that. I don't want anything to interfere with reading time. But there is a really good. I would be doing background research and a lot of raw writing, a lot of raw synergy, not the finished copy. The book would belong to someone else, wouldn't have my name on it. But there is a story. I made the mistake of mentioning it to the agent who is working between me and the person who wants to generate this material and who's paying for it. And that story is directly connected with Jeffrey Epstein. With the fact that more and more it looks like the engine that makes the world go round is gigantic interconnected pedophilia rings. And there is one of those connected with a famous American serial killer that with the Candyman, the so-called Dean Corll, the so-called Candyman, who warned some of his teenage Renfields, the kids who helped him, that if they crossed him, he was working for a syndicate for underage male pornography, that he was working for a syndicate, and if they crossed him, the syndicate would wipe them out. And most people writing about Dean Corll have assumed that he was making that up. But there's a lot of evidence that he wasn't. And there are a lot of people involved, names involved. And it's a huge, ugly, sordid story. I don't know if it's going to happen. But if it does, I will be spending all of 2026 hip deep in old newspaper archives and microfiche and whatnot. And actually, just as sordid as the subject is, it will be, if that turns out to be true, it'll be a relief. Because the other possibility would have been family annihilators, and I don't want to spend time researching family annihilators. I really don't. Books Supreme says, hi, Steve. I'm enjoying your read along with the Book of Genesis. Your commentary is as good as any footnotes I've read in the book. Oh, come now. Oh, come now. I do have another one of those coming up today. I made my videos a little late today because I'm still reeling from the aftermath of the blizzard for 26. I'm still reeling from that, but I did do a little more reading of the Adventures of Jacob today. So I'm hoping that goes up soon, so it's not interfering with your evening's reading. But I don't think I'm as good as footnotes, especially since I'm not doing a scholarly reading of the book. at all, which is really, really worth remembering. It's worth repeating so that I don't get quite as many ruffled emails. I am not doing a scholarly inquiry into this at all. We are reading it together as a book. HMUKHE. Hi, Steve. I don't know if I've heard you mention Tristram Shandy on your channel. Any thoughts on it? Do I have any thoughts on Tristram Shandy? Yes, I do. I rather like it. California says, what is the best book about the Russian Revolution? I don't really think of it there. As for me, there is no one outstanding thing, although quite a bit of them are really good. Nothing's coming to mind. I've reviewed a few of them that I thought were really, really good. But the titles, it's not one of my subjects, so the title's not coming to mind. ADHD Reader says, a friend and I are going to, I don't know if, are the titles not coming to my mind, or am I objecting on a cellular level to all these factoid questions? I don't know, one way or the other. Anyway, ADHD Reader says, a friend and I are going to embark on a read of The Tale of Genji in June. Do you have any recommendations to go with it, nonfiction or not? Well, my videos on the subject will stand you in good stead. But no, not really. The basic notes of the Washburn edition or the basic notes on the Royal Tyler translation will do just fine. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know it's not Sousa, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you like the song Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? It's not John Philip Sousa. True, I do like it. I don't like it as much as Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, but I still like it. Alexander says, any advance or inside information on in when we get the landmark Polybius? No. Stephen Barnsley says, tell us what you think of the BAFTA situation, or I involuntarily type something you'll regret. Yeah, right. See, I think you're guessing what I think about what my deeper thoughts on the subject, because you can't threaten to do something involuntary. My opinions are, I are perfectly willing to admit my opinions are not acceptable in the 21st century. They will brand me a bigot. So there's no point. I can leave my comments nice and safe by talking about the BBC instead, and say the BBC could have prevented this and they didn't do it, and that's kind of crummy on their part. California says, thoughts on Annie Jacobs' nuclear war scenario? It's brilliant, as I've said on this channel. Street Medic says, I'm waiting for a dinner to start featuring an immigration attorney who is about to go speak about what Trump is doing to the country. Ironically, it's at a Mexican restaurant. Pat Lester says, hello, Steve. Have you read Huckleberry? Oh, wait, I know how it goes. Yeah, thank you. Edward Gibbons says, Steve, do you like the poet Cecil Day Lewis? Yes. Gandhi says, do you like Kai Bird's book, American Prometheus? His biography of Roy Cohn is out this year. I really liked American Prometheus, yeah. Sean Patrick says, Steve, what are the logistics of a Brattle trip for you? Is it walkable, or is it a combination of walking and public transportation? It's public transportation. It's easy. It's really easy to do. It's over in no time. It's not, like if I wanted to go to the Adams property in North Adams, well, that would be a trip. I could do it, but that would not be an easy public transportation trip. As it is, it's very easy. By the time I'm the slightest bit irritated, it's over. Haga Sanders says, which history, not only of ancient authors, but of newer historians of the Middle Ages, would you wish they made a landmark edition of? Well, if you're including the Middle Ages, it would, of course, be Gerald of Wales. A gigantic new book translating pretty much everything, and especially the topography of Ireland and all of that. But in terms of ancient authors, of course, my first choice would be Livy. Colombian Thunder says, hi, Steve. About to finish Pride and Prejudice. It definitely took time for me to get used to it, but Austen's ability to make all the setup get tied up in such a neat bow is so satisfying. Your first reading of Pride and Prejudice. How amazing. Nick Piccarilli says, Ken Gloss did a talk at our local library and was great, but no Steve story, sadly. No. Ken has his shtick that he does, and he's really good at it. Steve, are there any American poets just as good as Walt Whitman or Emily Dickinson? Yes, there are American poets who are better than Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. You must be new here. Yeah, there are American poets who are better. Jimmy Merrill is better than either one of them. Longfellow is better than either one of them. I would even say, although nobody's going to know anymore, that Whittier is as good as either one of them. And the great Amy Lowell. ADHD reader says, have you dabbled in French Canadian literature? Any favorites? French Canadian literature? Is this possible? Dylan says, what do you make of Ayn Rand as a writer? She's terrible, unrelievedly awful. I never thought much of her, but someone whose taste I tend to trust said, despite the odious ideas, she was a good writer, and it made me wonder what you think. No, it's odious ideas and odious prose. There's no reason to spend any time with her at all. If you feel like you absolutely have to, then read Anthem. At least it's not 1,000 pages long. Serendipity Walpole says, hi, Steve. How do you feel about the World Cup being in the U.S.? Insane. It's insane. They should have changed their decision. I know it's a lot of logistics involved, but it would be insane to do. I don't know what they're thinking. Karen says, state of the Stevestream. What a great surprise. I'm afraid you would never stop reading. Yeah. The Blizzard of 26 really sent me to reading overdrive, and it was hard to get out of it. It really was. Just this morning, at around dawn or maybe a little after that, I was actually thinking, well, I'm not going to do anything but read all day anyway. I'm not going to make videos of anything else. 2 days, I came to my senses, of course, because I want to talk to my imaginary booktube friends, but still. David Hume says, what do you think of Ian M. Banks' culture novels? What about his other books? I like Ian M. Banks. I don't love him. Even the culture books, I don't love, but I like him. Colombian Thunder says, not sure how you feel about 28 Years Later, but I was personally shocked by it. I didn't expect to find a zombie movie of all things to be so mesmerizing. Yeah, I loved it. Just loved it. Mesmerizing. Good word. Coldifornia says, no, Coldifornia, what happened? The chat jumped. Let's see here. Let's go and find you. Coldifornia says what? God help us. Look at all these comments. Let's find you. Where were you? Sorry about this, everybody. The chat jumped. There we go. Is Pilgrim at Tinker Creek worth reading? Oh my God, yes, of course, yes, it is very much worth reading. Oh my God. Haga Sanders says, is there a reason to read the autobiography of Salman Maimon? No idea what that is. Thomas says, I didn't follow Kissinger's last days. Did he move rightward as he aged to meet the GOP where they are, or did the GOP move towards him? Well, move towards in what way? In some ways, yeah, the GOP moved towards him, a total amoral bankruptcy. In other ways, the GOP is not interested in him because the GOP doesn't exist anymore. It's MAGA. So you stop using those letters. It's not Grand Old Party. It's MAGA. Make lawyers get lawyers. Make attorneys get attorneys. And in some ways, they move towards him in terms of there no longer being a moral component, even theoretically, to governing or international statecraft. But in other ways, they did things that, of course, he would have been horrified by. If he'd been Compostus Mentis, he would have been horrified by it. Manny says, darn it, I'm late. California says, do you have a favorite book about chess? Not really, no. I've read all the basic instructional manuals, like modern chess openings and whatnot, but there's not much there to be a fan of. Jovan says, David Lade is a close personal friend of mine, and he wanted your opinion on whether Hegg says 315 bench press was legit. David Lade is a close personal friend of yours, and we were mentioning chess. He's a huge fanatical fan of chess. Estonia's greatest export. I'm pretty sure that Hegg says a 315 bench press was legit, but only once. And that's the key to a bench press is what you do for your sets, not what you do just once for the cameras. But boy, oh boy, if David Lade was a personal friend of yours, I have so many questions for him. Sean Patrick says, Steve, a vet once told me when pets start uncontrollably going to the bathroom in the house, it's time to start planning for the end as they're no longer living a full life. Too harsh. What does that mean? No. What on earth? Just because they're losing control of their bladder that you should kill them? What about the rest of their life? Are they happy? Are they enjoying themselves? The rest of you aren't going to treat me that way, are you? I'm only barely in control of my bladder as it is. When I start to wet the fainting couch, are you going to take me behind the barn? God, too harsh. It's unbelievable. Manny says Phineas Redo completely pulled me in, and I missed the Stevestream. I just started volume 2 though, so I hope you can forgive me. For Trollop, I will forgive you. Rena is reading says there are 158 people here. Good lord. Steve, what are your general thoughts on George Galloway? I don't pretend to like him, and I can't stand the way he talks. Albert says, "Do you have a favorite New Yorker cartoonist?" Yes, indeed, Helen Hokinson. Student of the Human Condition says, "Yay, another stream. 1 a.m. in Europe, so we mortals have to go to sleep. We'll watch it later." You don't have to go to sleep. You could simply not. TMTB, this is great, Steve. You seem to have an accurate view of things. Depends on what things. I've had a number of questions tonight on dogs. You won't get more accurate opinions anywhere in the world than from me on dogs. That's one of the subjects I know really, really well. Sean Patrick says, Steve, what was Hemingway's beef with Ford Maddox Ford? It is what Harold Bloom would have called the anxiety of influence. Hemingway didn't have a real beef except that he knew he had to kill the previous generation. And Steve, have you ever used tobacco products? No, I never have. Once again, my nose is not perfunctory. It actually works, whereas yours does not. No, not in a million years. No. Slasher says, is there a particular decade in history of Superman that you recommend where I could read some consistently good and classic Superman stories? Well, it depends on what kind of a Superman story you want. I mean, the golden ages, they're all great, but they are pretty formulaic, and there's nothing in the way of character development. If you have the Stan Lee virus, if you've been infected by that and you want there to be character development and stakes, well, then you want to read Superman from the 70s. That run that he had with Neil Adams covers, you want to do something like that. But if you want just what I consider to be good comic books, normal comic book stories where there aren't any character development and there isn't any stakes, then the golden age would be fine for you. Let's see here. Colombian Thunder says, I have a very hard time trying to speed read. I understand it requires practice, but every time I try, not only do I hold my breath, but I find it more focused more on how fast rather than comprehension. Well, actual speed reading isn't worth your time to do. Actual speed reading involves seeing whole paragraphs, gapping in so-called inessential phrases and terms and whatnot. It's not a way to read at all. This isn't a competition. If I realize that a lot of you are racked by the idea that there's so many books out there you're never going to get to, but I think the same thing. So, fast readers think the same thing. So definitely don't hurt your reading experience by doing something like that. Jimmy says, hello, Steve. Do you have a favorite Soseki? He's been sneaking up on my favorite authors list, and I plan to visit his museum on a trip to Japan next month. Favorite Soseki? Well, no, I don't think I do. I started to revisit him for Japanuary and really need to continue because I found that I read what did I read on the little blue Kindle? I read 2 of his books that I had not read in years and loved them a lot more than I remembered loving them. So I really need to revisit him. Certainly, I'm in no position to make a favorite. No, although I wonder what the museum would be like. I never went to it. Hega Sanders says, I hope you will one day show us if there is another side to this sofa and grace us with a house tour as far as is showable. Well, it's not much to see. It's all books. Once upon a time, it would have been books and beagles. Now it's just books. Street Medic says, got to go to the speaker is going up to the podium. California says, is Herman Wouk's War duology worth reading? Yes, it is. Okay. Steve, I've been exercising, not subvocalizing for 6 months, but the progress is quite slow. Do you think it's possible to do if English is not my first language? Yeah, it just takes a while. It's a new mental pathway that you are breaking in. That takes a while. ADHD Reader says, what advice would you have to get rid of subvocalizing? My retention and comprehension goes down drastically. Keep trying. Although you don't have to. You can keep vocalizing. You can keep subvocalizing. It doesn't matter. It's not a race. But if you're dead set on doing it, you have to keep trying. If you have been subvocalizing your whole life, it's the way you were taught how to read. So that takes a long time to counteract. Hannah's Books is back. Maybe the Brandeis bookstore closed because people stopped going once Mole was gone. I felt sorry. I didn't know, of course, there was no internet at the time. So I went, over to Coolidge Corner to go to the Brookline Booksmith is over there, and they have a basement with used books. and an old friend of mine from the Brattle was running it at the time. So I'd pop in there. They had a New England Comics over there at the time. They had a Barnes and Noble over there at the time. There are a whole bunch of other things now. None of those things are there now. The Brookline Booksmith is there, but their used book section downstairs is criminally overpriced. And the other things are all gone. Barnes and Noble's gone. The comic shop is gone. I used to go there though, and I went there and I just made the normal loop over to the other side of the train tracks to go to the Brandeis bookstall, and there wasn't anything there anymore. It was I hope I'm not the reason. I got my poster out of it. That's what counts. David Bergen is here. Hello, Steve. How good are our chances of getting an Exodus read aloud after Genesis? Well, good Lord, considering the response I've got from Genesis, I think the chances are pretty good. And Hannah says yes to Exodus. Yes. Serendipity Walpole says, Steve, do you think life originated on Earth because of panspermia? No, I doubt it. It's so easy. Comparatively speaking, it is so easy for the basics of RNA replication. It's so easy to do in the right biochemical conditions, which Earth certainly had. That I think the spontaneous generation of life is far more likely. David Hume says, I'm just starting to read Anne of Green Gables. Are you a fan? I am. Jovan says, I went on a date yesterday and we started talking about Agatha Christie, and she immediately started bragging about how she's always guessed as the killer before the reveal. Now I know she's a liar. Manny says, are you a fan of Oblomov? Oh, yes, absolutely. Does it belong on that list of great Russian novels? It absolutely does belong on a list of great Russian novels. California says, just watched the Lonesome Dove miniseries in tribute to the late, great Robert Duvall. Thanks for recommending the book and the miniseries. Can't go wrong with either one. Steve Baranchi says, do you find strange these days that people are going about with usual hobbies and conversations as though there isn't an ongoing authoritarian / economic takeover of the country and probably the world? I don't find it strange. It's never not this way. It's that old joke about how you lost your fortune slowly and then all at once. That's exactly how it happens in situations like this. The bulk of the country has no idea what has happened. They will learn at the midterms. Some of them will learn at the midterms. And all of them will learn at the date that would have been the next presidential election. That's when that's when it will be undeniable. There was a point in Mussolini's Italy, there was a point in Hitler's Germany where it was undeniable. And that we haven't reached that point yet. So it is still possible. And America's a huge country. So it is still possible for people to go about their day. Just you got TDS, everything's normal. Let's see here. Ethan says, I love books but had a closed off, strict childhood. What book could broaden my horizon? No way to answer that question. I need to know what you like to read. Heg Sanders says, have you listened to the Rest is History podcast? No, I don't really do podcasts. Even though I'm putting my hand in the fire with this question, I ask, what do you think of it? Do you like it? I really don't know podcasts. I've heard about the Rest is History, but I don't think I've ever listened to one. Wine and Calzone says, was wondering if your vintage SF or comic trades have their own bookshelf. The comic trades do, in the depths of Mordor. That was going to be the next thing that I did in my Brandventory, but I thought that'll be 6-7 videos that are only comic books, and that nobody will want to listen to that except comic book fans. But yeah, the comic trades are all in the shelves of this little recessed hutch in the living room. And the vintage science fiction, I have only one bookcase for mass market paperbacks. So every mass market paperback is on there. They aren't anywhere else. Let's see here. Sebastian says, Steve, I'm loving your videos on the Bible. I can't wait for the next one. Well, the one should go up today, and then we'll just keep going with Joseph and his brothers will be coming up. Patrick says, Steve, I saw Hampton Sides referred to as the modern day Shelby Foote. Who of the two should take that as an insult? Well, maybe the person meant it in that Hampton Sides books are really readable, because Shelby Foote's books are really readable. So maybe they didn't mean it any other way. Maybe they didn't mean the South shall rise again. Ted Rastlin, TNG is just bad. I used to think that. I don't anymore. I know it's not now, but I used to, for years, I thought that. Wine and Calzone says, Starfleet Academy tentacle crossover, all hail King Tentacle. No, but I was thinking, we know so little about the world of Starfleet Academy. We know so little about it. Lots of things have changed. The Federation is weaker. It's trying to pull itself together. There's no Klingon Empire anymore. There's no Romulan Empire anymore. What about the Andorians? What about the Tellarites? The villain in Starfleet Academy is half Tellarite, so we know they're still around. Are they a major power? What about the Ferengi? There's at least one Ferengi in the class of Starfleet Academy. We never heard them speak. We know they still exist, but what other powers are there? We don't have any idea. So the idea that I had for if I was going to do a Starfleet Academy story for fanfiction.net, it would be a time travel story. But it wouldn't be I would get the cast together. It's just that some of the ideas for the cast are just not workable. What is the hologram? Sam. What is she? Does she have a mobile emitter? Like the Doctor? And if so, she never mentioned it. It's not visible on her. Some of the characters are not really tenable. Also, Genesis, I have no idea. Who is she? She's short and she has weird eyebrows, but who is she? I have no idea. But some of the others are interesting and would be fun to put them in a totally different scenario altogether. Steve, you mentioned you have a sibling or a few, I forgot, that you don't see anymore. Can you tell us why? I'm curious. Well, any of you who've had family would probably be able to guess the reasons. Not all families work out. Oh, baby, what are you doing? Oh, you're going somewhere. Oh, Frida, this never works out. She always does this. She goes over there to have an adventure, and then she realizes that I'm not over there. Oh, baby, that isn't going to work out, little girl. Oh, little girl, what are you doing? Are you going to dig? Are you going to make a bed over there? Anyway, K Napalo says, "Is Books of the Week podcast still active? Miss your banter with Jeff." Yeah, we got a new episode today. I was mentioning it earlier in the podcast or in the Stevestream that I watched the episode. It not only went up today, but I actually watched it and really enjoyed it. It is a really good product that we make. It should have a huge audience. Let's see here. Coldifornia says the Epstein ring sounds very similar to the Franklin credit ring. Edward Gibbon says, what do you consider to be the greatest scholar of ancient Rome, apart from the three biggies, Gibbon, Mommsen, and Sim? Probably Fergus Millar, but I don't really rank scholars like that. So, Steve, who are your favorite? I can't read your name. Your name is in Hebrew and I can't read it. So, Steve, who are your favorite dogs you've ever had? If you had to pick one. Yeah, there is just one. There was just one. Although plenty of others have come close, right? If you've had dogs, you know you love them all, but there are some that get in closer than others. And for me, one above all. Yeah, I would be able to pick one. Manny says, I've been absolutely loving your Bible read through. Yeah, I know. So have a lot of people. I'm hearing a lot about it. Although I can't say I'm happy about it taking the spotlight away from Lady Glenn. Yes, I know. I need to get back to Can You Forgive Her? I just haven't done that. I haven't done it because, I mean, there are time constraints, right? I mean, a reading of a chapter of Trollope, if I'm taking my time and doing lots and lots of interjections, as we both know I'm going to do, is 40 minutes. A reading of the next batch of chapters from Genesis is 40 minutes. That's 2 hours right there. And I know that I make lots of videos every day, but still, I do have other things to do. I am not retired. Jenny Park says, is the Book of the Week schedule so chaotic due to Jeff's constant firing and hiring, or are you finally showing mercy to him? No, it's mostly that. Yeah. I fire him in a fit of pique. I throw an ivory-handled hairbrush at him. He barely dodges it. And then I say, why isn't the show up? And he has to remind me that I fired him. I would like it to be more regular every week. I would like it to be. The problem is he is working at the library and he is indispensable there. And I don't know if you're that person at your own job, but when you're that person at your own job, no one leaves you alone. They don't leave you alone. California says, thoughts on W.E. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction? Is it worth reading? I don't know what that means. Is it worth reading? I'm not sure it is. Everything he wrote is worth reading. But Hegasander says, but not reading it scholarly or liturgically doesn't exclude people within reason, of course, from commenting on your comments. No, it doesn't. But that's not 99% of the comments on my comments that I'm getting. 99% of the comments on my comments that I'm getting are liturgical, whether the emailer thinks it or not. If I am reading it as a book, I dislike the assumption on the part of all the commenters that I don't know the liturgy, that I don't know the theological interpretation of things. I kind of do, but I'm reading it as a book. So if I say, well, why on earth would this character say that? I don't want to know what the Council of Trent said. I don't want to know. I don't want you to tell me. It doesn't exclude it. No, it's just as a way to do it. Coldifornia says, what is your favorite book about the CIA? Oh, God. Oh, God. Nothing's coming to mind. I've read so many books on the CIA. Jeez Louise. Including a new curated version of the Church Committee report. No, I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. Sebastian says, I'm sure you've covered this in videos, but what is your gripe with philosophy? It's a junk, fake discipline. It's about nothing. It is nothing. It is a waste of time. It is merely men playing with words because they can. That's it. That's all it is. You go fumbling around in the fog of words that it exudes, looking for something tough, a hard kernel, and there isn't any there. The philosophy is the act of posing a question that any 5-year-old can answer correctly and then pretending it's a mystery and writing a 1,000-page book about it in horrible prose in German. David Hume says, do you like Neil Sheehan's A Bright Shining Lie? I would want to read it, but I'm daunted by its size. I do really like it. I just recently read a book review in, I think, the London Review or the TLS, where the reviewer just offhandedly referred to it as indispensable. And I bridled that for a minute and then thought, no, that is largely right. And I don't have a copy of it. I know that's been a refrain throughout this book. Coldifornia says, do you enjoy the plays of August Wilson? I do. Jeffrey says, aside from books, do you collect anything else like albums, watches, Beanie Babies? No. Once upon a time, I collected dogs, but that appears to be over. That period appears to be over. Siva Bronstein says, when you say, oh, come now, I get nostalgic for Harold Bloom interviews on Charlie Rose. Let's just move on, shall we? Let's see here. Oh, the chat jumped. As soon as you mentioned Charlie Rose, the chat jumped. So we have to go back to Siva Bronstein. There we go. Bottle Imp Books do some work on saints depicted in fiction. Doing some work on saints depicted in fiction. Do you have any favorite fictional works featuring a saint? Well, I assume you're not counting fictional saints like in Earthly Powers by Anthony Burgess. And no, I don't have any. ADHD Reader says, Steve, do you collect Funko Pops? Show us your collection. I only have 3. I don't collect them. No, I've never bought one in my life. But people have sent me some. Or actually, 2. It's 2. Someone sent me a Funko Pop of Superman, and someone sent me a Funko Pop of Mr. Spock. Which means there is one other Funko Pop out there that is natural. And I mentioned it at the time. This was years ago, and no one actually figured out what it was. Those are 2 icons of TV science fiction. There's one other that I'm sure has a Funko Pop. I'll give you a hint. He's got a long, long scarf. Anyway, Jenny Park says, I think I may finally read an Austen book this year. Are you telling me you haven't read Jane Austen? You haven't read Pride and Prejudice? Cosmic A says, Steve, how should I keep my blood pressure down when I have heard MAGA say the Epstein stuff is not relevant, given the quote, other side's support for drag queens? I know. I pity your blood pressure because there's no way to do it. MAGA supports the raping of children because their God does it. Many MAGA have said in interviews that if he wanted to rape my daughters, I would let him. I wouldn't like it, but I'd find a way to live with it. Such people are gone. They are lost. There is no breadcrumb back. There's no avenue to take. They're gone. They're just not there anymore. Clarence Beek says, would you rather be governed by the first 200 names in the Boston phone book? No idea what that means. Coldifornia says, what are your thoughts on Rick Perlstein? I really enjoyed his book on Barry Goldwater. I largely don't like him. I brochetted one of his books, and he did not like it at all. Wine and Calzone says, "What was your snow total where you are in Boston?" About 25 inches. Morgan says, "Steve, what do you think of James Taylor's music?" It's generally okay. I really like Up on a Roof, but otherwise, I don't live by it. I lived through the time when it was utterly unavoidable, and I think that prejudiced me against it. Nate Bouchard says, "I was driven to your channel by Randy the Literate Texan. I'm hooked. What ratio of fiction/nonfiction do you read?" Well, wasn't that nice? You're hooked on my channel. I don't know why. Uh, I would say probably 80/20, fiction, nonfiction. Uh, Stephen Newton says, "Since it is clear that there is no future for the Republican Party after Trump will it get replaced by another party, do you think?" Well, it's a long way away. Trump's not going to die until 2047. So that's a long way away. But it's already been replaced by MAGA. So all the mantras of the Republican Party, small government, lower taxes, responsible foreign policy, all that's out the window anyway, in favor of MAGA, hatred and bigotry, violence, hatred, bigotry. We hate you, own the libs, be rude to everybody. So that is already there. The Republican Party, as it was, is gone. It can't come back. But it'll just be MAGA. It'll just be a different iteration of MAGA under a different Trump. Jerome says, "Is there any American equivalent of the Diary of Samuel Pepys?" Oh, there are plenty. Yeah, not as good. None that I think are as enjoyable. Ned Rorem, for instance, his diaries are really, really interesting to read. And they go on forever and ever. He kept a diary his whole life and published his whole life. Published it throughout his whole life. California says, "Is Playboy of the Western World worth reading?" Yes. Yes, it is. That reading guy says, "I'm starting to think you are genuinely baffled by sleep. It does confuse me. It does. It is such a deeply unpleasant experience that it wouldn't bother me so much if all of you did it and also griped about it, but you love it." Anyway, Damien says, "Do you allot yourself a certain amount of time to write in your journal?" No, I don't set a clock by it. I fill a page and I don't stop. So I write the date up top, and then take just a second to organize my thoughts, look at the day, look at the 24 hours that have gone since I last wrote, and then write, filling the page and not stopping. The pen never comes up. So I don't have a time with it, but it never takes long. California says, "What do you think of Simone's Dirty Snow?" I really like it. Scott Jones says, "The recommendation of a friend, I picked up Solzhenitsyn's August 1914. From your perspective, did it make a good purchase? It's a big book and only the first part of a series after all." I have always found it to be inert. So much of his longer works are inert. Steve, is it true that Pepys was sterile before he even began the diary? Where did you hear that? Probably he was, but we don't know. Jovan says, "I'm 3 days into office job. I've aged 10 years already." Oh my God, I've heard such nightmares about office jobs. "I'm going to apply to be Jack Edwards' private coach. Enough is enough." Well, he doesn't need a private coach. Steve, is it possible to justify Hiroshima, much less Nagasaki? No. Slasher says, "I am definitely not for the Stan Lee. What's my favorite virus? LOL, Golden Age Superman." It is. Thank you. Your library might have a big omnibus volume. There are like 10 of them. Those Michael K. Vaughan has them all. Those big hardcover omnibus volumes. They make attractive library purchases because they're big and tough. They're indestructible. Martins says, are your indoor plants doing well?" They are. They're hanging in there. I am told by gardeners that you can expect them to seem like they are just hanging on grimly until it's warmer, that they are seasonal, they are largely asleep. I've been told that. It certainly looks that way. I tend to them. I make sure that they're well watered and well fed and have lots of sunlight. But I'm not expecting anything miracles until the spring. Wine and Calzone says, "Don't know if you get any feedback about Irish stew, but I appreciate your hot take on the current scandals we call news." California says, "Do you know if William Howard Russell's war correspondence worth reading?" That reading guy says, "I'm still waiting for your reading of an original translation of Erasmus. I'll take Homer too." Well, wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't it be something if we finish an entire read aloud of the King James Bible with commentary, and then move straight on to the next book on the Western Canon Starter Kit? And what if that were the Iliad? Well, I'm not going to read anybody else's translation. Wouldn't that be something? If an ongoing theme throughout the rest of time on this channel was not just the Western Canon, but the Western Canon read aloud with commentary. When was the last time Steve was on a date with Deb? Dates make no sense. They don't make any sense. Hannah's Books is here. It's easy to know Christie's killer. It is the only character with absolutely no motive. Albert Gold says, timing-wise, a read-along with Exodus would probably line up perfectly with Steve narrating a Passover Seder. Morgan says, I watched The Lion in Winter, the dialogue, the script, it was unbelievable. I was almost shocked how every single line was quotable witticism or the perfect adage. Thanks for talking about it so much. I barely shut up about it. I barely do. It is just so incredible. And right now, since you mentioned it, I'm having a hard time resisting the urge to quote from it at length. Morgan wants to know, can you ride a horse? I can indeed. English. Cosmic A says, considering he's one of your favorite British monarchs, do you agree that Edward VII was the first British monarch post 1688 to not favor a political faction over another? Well, he knew perfectly well that he couldn't do that. He knew the thin ice that he was on, even then. And he, in his heart, he did favor political factions. He just didn't make it part of his job, and did a wonderful job of that, I think. We are told that the model for a constitutional monarch in the modern era was set by George V and especially by George VI, and then embodied wholeheartedly in physical form by Elizabeth II. But I think it was my guy that largely hatched out what that was, with a few exceptions. He did diplomacy, which monarchs are not allowed to do now. He wasn't technically allowed to do it then, but he did it anyway. Who's going to say no to the king? Ethan says, I like history, fantasy, magic, realism. Any book recommendations? I would need to know a lot more about what you like and don't like. Those categories are enormous. Coldifornia says, who is in your opinion, the most underrated / overlooked U.S. president? Oh, come now. Do I need to say? William Howard Taft. That reading guy says, what is your favorite part of the Bible? The whole Bible, or you mean, I'm assuming you don't mean just the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible would be 1st and 2nd Samuel, but the whole Bible, it's the Gospel of St. Luke. Colombian Thunder says, reading through MFK Fisher and Anthony Bourdain's memoirs as well, I was curious what your favorite book about food might be. Probably it is MFK Fisher. Probably it's Surf It Forth or Consider the Oyster, something like that. One of her little books. Morgan says, I ran into Ivanhoe and the Agony and the Ecstasy at a used bookstore, purchased because of your faithful enthusiasm. Yes, I love them both. Of course, you can go, if you want the opposite view on Agony and Ecstasy, you can find Christopher Russell's video, his infamous video on the subject. He hated it. Haga Sanders says, what is your favorite part of the Old Testament? Well, like I mentioned, 1st and 2nd Samuel. Siva Bronstein says, just remembered a close friend, very bright and a reader since he was a kid, was lavishly praising Stephen King to me recently. I mostly nodded and grimaced because I didn't have you handy. I appreciate the reading enthusiasm. As I always say, some reading is better than none at all. Even Stephen King. That's, at least you've got a reader there. Coldifornia says, are there any recommended commentaries on the book of Genesis? What's her name? Oh God, I'm never going to remember. There's one called oh my God, it's called The Roots of Desire. I think it is so incredibly good. Here, I've got the iPad with the Legion of Superheroes, of course, my beloved Legion of Superheroes as my background. Let's try this out. I don't usually like to look away from you when I'm doing this, but is it called Roots of Desire? I'm surprised that Hannah wouldn't chime in. I bet she knows this author. No, maybe it's not. There it is. It's called The Beginning of Desire, and the author is Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg, Zornberg, and it's incredible. It's amazingly good. I wish I could read it out loud. Sam says, "Hi Steve, have you been following the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping case? If so, what are your thoughts on it?" I have not been. No. That reading guy says, "Speaking about writing a story, you haven't replaced NaNoWriMo. Have you written fiction at all since then?" No, I have not, and I need to do that. Janet Workman is constantly yakking at me from Calais that we need to start writing on this channel. I miss writing fiction. I really, every day, I miss it. And I could find the time, although if I get this big serial killer thing, I mean, that's too much money to turn down. But that it would be tough to find the time. But I really do need to start writing again. What will it be? What will it be? I have an idea for a series of books, novels, thin things, lots of fun, but I would be publishing under a pseudonym. Under my own name, well, maybe also a pseudonym. Maybe I could do Starfleet Academy fan fiction for fanfiction.net just to get back in the swing of things. Steve, have you ever seen Trump in person? I've seen Netanyahu at a soccer game when I was young. I've never seen him in person, no. Steve Bronstein says, "I loved Oblomov. I read it while slothfully laying in bed, ignoring family, friends, and chores." The only way to read Oblomov is in bed. That reading guy says, "It's obvious why Steve doesn't get along with his family. They're Irish." Enough said. Cosmic A says, "Given your view, Stephen King, how do you view Dean Koontz?" I like Koontz when he's good. I don't always like him. A lot of his books are dumb, but then a lot of everybody's books are dumb. But I like some of his books. I like Platforms. I like Phantoms a lot. I like Lightning, which I just got in the mail. Somebody sent me a mass market paperback. I even like the Odd Thomas books. California says, "What are your thoughts on the debacle by Zola?" Yeah, I have a whole bunch of thoughts that I can just reel off in a live stream. Oh, you people. Morgan says, "Is Paul Newman the best looking male actor of the 20th century?" No. No. Of the whole 20th century? No. I no. There would be a lot of people I would put in front of him, especially the second half of the 20th century when Hollywood started to breed its stars in laboratories. So it wasn't left to chance anymore. Sam says, "Steve, is there a conspiracy theory that you actually think is true?" Oh, there are quite a few. There are quite a few. One, a number of them have been turned on by you people over the years. Like, for instance, Kurt Cobain, the death of Kurt Cobain. I absolutely dismissed that completely. It's just nonsense talk until I looked into it. And now I think it's unquestionable that his wife had him murdered. That reading guy, oh, no, that reading guy causes trouble. He caused the chat to jump. Here, let's go find him. There we go. Have you ever met an active CIA agent? Is there an interesting story there? I believe I have, yes. No interesting story. Stephen Newton says, "I am watching TNG and it is fine. Not great TV, but enjoyable comfort TV." California says, "I think TNG had the best cast of any primetime series. They all seem to play off each other so well. Incredible." It would be utter treason for me to say that their cast chemistry was better than the original series, but I know what you mean. Sean Patrick says, "Steve, I always read that de Maupassant was a master of the short story. Is he that good?" He is the best. He is the best short story in a short story writer in any language, anywhere in human literacy. He is even in English translation, he is well worth your time. He's better than Chekhov. Colombian Thunder says, when can we get the Steve Donahue Funko Pop or Frida one? It could be collection. Must Read More says, "I have only 2 of those Funko Pops, Happy Gilmore and Pris from Blade Runner. Both were gifts." What an odd pair. Morgan says, "Was Ethan Hawke's novel A Bright Ray of Darkness terrible? Is Franco a better writer?" They're both pretty bad. Jenny Park says, "I'm a failure as a Scot. Never read Austen, Bronte, or even Shakespeare. For some reason, my school didn't have any required reading. Started reading some of the common ones now as an adult." Better late than never, I suppose. Serendipity says, "Steve, who was the smartest president in U.S. history? John Quincy Adams, Coolidge. Incredible to know that James Garfield was an amateur mathematician with a proof of the Pythagorean theorem." It's John Quincy Adams by a wide margin. Yes. David Hume says, "I'm guessing your favorite doctor is Tom Baker." For a long time, he was. He would be that third Funko Pop if anyone sent it to me. Definitely, just for the amount of time I've spent with him. For a long time, he was, but I honestly think that I might prefer Peter Capaldi's doctor. I honestly think I might. California says, I feel like it's finally time for me to read the Divine Comedy as I begin to encroach upon middle age. It certainly is. Sam says, Steve, what do you think of Ken Liu's fantasy series, The Dandelion Dynasty? Not its biggest fan. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know a fellow Led Zeppelin fan when I see one. When I watch you, that's what I see. You've been talking to David Murphy. Have you dropped Fool in the Rain to David Murphy? Manny says, are you a fan of Romola? It's been on my shelf for a while now, but I don't know if it's one of Eliot's stinkers. I, of course, love it. It's written for me. I don't know how much. Excuse me. I don't know how enthralling a normal reader would find it. Let's just put it that way. Cosmic A says, what do you think of the best historical fiction about Elizabeth? About Elizabeth I? Well, I'm naturally going to be a little predisposed to George Garrett here for reasons that need not be elaborated. His book, The Succession, is wonderful. There's also a novel called Roanoke that doesn't exclusively feature Elizabeth, but it's wonderful. She's also great in No Bed for Bacon. The great novel about her has not been written, I don't think. The Wolf Hall level novel about her has not been written. Michael Lombardo says, what's your incel book event for March? I was thinking about it, but I was thinking, aren't there other events? Don't I want to just throw my wholehearted support behind all the other big booktube events in March? I mean, there are a couple. There's March of the Mammoths and March Mystery Madness right there, and I know I'm missing one. There's another one in March. Don't I just want to do that and leave off? I mean, my incel event for February, library, disgusted even me. Jovan says, Podgorica is an interesting destination for book lovers, as we have the worst library in the world. They don't let you browse. I have to ask them if they have a book, and they go and check. Okay. Colombian Thunder says, I am ambivalent about sleep. My body loves it. The amount of time I don't get to do anything bothers me, though. The dreams can be nice sometimes. TMTB says, when I read the Golyov family, I found it wild how many terrible things could happen to a family. Later, I read that it was a satire. It was supposed to be humorous / amusing or gloomy or both. Yeah. Did you like it? I guess would be my question here. California says, would you ever recommend any historical gossip books? I'm only familiar with John Aubrey and Suetonius. Well, I'd recommend both of those, definitely, but there are lots of others. They serve their purpose, definitely. You could read, for instance, the whole of the Memoirs of Casanova. Gandhi says, I know you enjoy looking at Architectural Digest. What is your favorite style for decorating? I don't have a favorite style for decorating books. California says, thoughts on Gogol? Do you enjoy Dead Souls? Oh, yes, absolutely. I like him. Serendipity says, Steve, do you like the books A Song of Ice and Fire, despite their many issues, as you've said? Do you like A Storm of Swords? Yes. They're monstrously overwritten. I still like them because I like Martin as a writer. Yeah, I like them. I don't do any more than like them. That reading guy is back, and he has a #1 crown next to his name. You are not going to read the entire King James Bible, are you? It might take you a few years, and I don't know if I'd survive a reading of Leviticus. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but do you know of anyone, alive or dead, who could make Leviticus interesting other than me? ADHD reader says, Steve, are you a King James onlyist? No, I am not. Scotland says, regarding Solzhenitsyn, before Rats, I should have asked you first. Yeah, I would stick, if you want to read a huge work of his, read the Gulag Archipelago. It is it's staggeringly brilliant. Literary Layer says, hello, Steve. Is there any chance that this stream will turn into a State of the Union watch party? No, I don't know how to do a watch party. I don't know how to do it at all, or I would. But I don't know how to do it. Cosmic A says, is the film Donnie Darko a dude bro film? Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes, it is. Colderfornia says, what are your thoughts on Tim Gregory's Going Nuclear? I really liked it. If it's the book I'm thinking of, I really liked it. That reading guy says, have you ever met a member of the British royal family? How about the Queen? Maybe she asked for book recommendations. The British royal family? No. The British aristocracy? Yes, I have. Must Read More says, how did a fun-loving guy like Edward VII have a stick in the mud song like George V? Well, that's the way of it, right? Isn't it? That's the way of it. That's how it happens. That's the way it's most likely to happen. Martin says, is there a Tom Baker Doctor Who Funko Pop? I'm sure there is. Yeah, there must be. Ethan says, do you like Piranesi? Do you know of any books similar to it? I love it. Similar to it would mean I would need to know in what way. Hannah's book says Aviva Zornberg is fabulous. She is. She's incredible. I recommend her every time I do a bookshelf tour. We come across her book, and I recommend it. Gandhi says, what do you make of Stephen King's post saying Trump has no children? Well, I think he might be wrong. There is a distinct cutoff point. As everyone in New York press knew at the time that it was happening, there was a distinct event, a distinct cutoff point after which Donald Trump cannot have children and cannot grow hair anywhere on his body. But before that, he could. I don't doubt that Uday and Kusei are his sons. I don't doubt that at all. Coldifornia says, what are your thoughts on Daniel Carm's Today I Wrote Nothing? We're getting a lot of what are your thoughts on and then a specific book. I'm not sure I know that book. Let's see here. Valkra is more fun to read in Hebrew. Okay, I didn't think anything was fun to read in Hebrew, but you'd know better. Michael Lombardo says, anything in particular you're rereading for America's 250th birthday? No. I'm not celebrating America's 250th birthday. No. That reading guy says, have you ever published a mainstream book under a pseudonym? What are you talking about? How could you say such a thing? The nerve, the very idea. Coldifornia says, I would pay money for you to do a read-along of a Steve Reach of the Raj Quartet. Well, I'd love to read the Raj Quartet out loud. Oh my God, that would be fun. But a read-along? Yes. Not a read aloud. I can't. It's under copyright, obviously. But a read aloud, a read along of the Raj Quartet? Would that be fun? That might be a lot of fun. Jenny Park says, do you have any advice on how to deal with the voice in your head that says, you're a crap writer, why bother? Well, Jenny Parks, I don't know how long you've been watching my channel, but the people who've been watching my channel and know it fairly well or know me fairly well, that reading guy, Hannah is here, are rolling their eyes right now. Ask anyone who knows me. I do not hear that voice. So no, I don't have any advice on the subject. Morgan says, laughed at your Newman reaction. Who would you put in front of him? Well, it would depend on when we're talking about. I mean, when are we talking about? I mean, in his prime, Robert Redford was widely regarded as the most handsome man in the world. I would probably agree with that. It's certainly no comparison with Paul Newman at his prime. But what about if we're talking primes? We're talking, early 30s. What about Tony Perkins? I mean, everybody knows him from Psycho, but what about him? Or a very young Roddy McDowall. Nobody knows these names anymore, but I don't know how to answer the question. That's what I'm trying to say. It would never occur to me that Newman would be in the top 100. Anyway, Literary Layer says, wow, I was trying to think of what wanted to ask and realized I had the same conspiracy theory question. Cosmic A says, yeah, I come up. Conspiracy theories come up with me. Cosmic A says, how do you feel about the book JFK Conservative by Ira Stoll? It's not very good. I think I reviewed it. I'll ask David if I did. Stephen Newton says, I just picked up a Beatrice Small novel from my used bookstore because of your praise for her. I wonder if you'll get it. They are psychodramas. Sam says, Steve, can you ask David Murphy to set up a Discord server for you? I had one once upon a time. I didn't like it. It seemed like another thing that I had to pay attention to. It seemed like I was getting a fish aquarium. I could probably set it up on my own, but what would I do with it? That reading guy says, Guy de Maupassant is better than Flannery O'Connor or the many Irish writers. Yes. Hate to say it. Yes. ADHD reader says, who is your favorite French writer? Is there such a thing? Well, highest quality or favorite? Favorite would probably be Georges Simenon. And your favorite French writer is the Marquis de Sade. Stale Proustian Madeline says, The Orla by Guy de Maupassant is the best short story I've ever read. I read it at age 14. Still think about it. California says, I'm very surprised about the arrest of Andrew and Peter Mandelson. What do you think will happen regarding their arrests? It is pretty shocking. I can't imagine. I mean, the end result 10 years from now would be that Andrew goes to jail. I can't imagine that happening. Mandelson, I could see going to jail. I don't know why either one of them didn't flee the country. They had the means to do it, and they had to know what was coming. I guess they just thought, no, I am untouchable for various reasons. They probably thought they were untouchable. I bet they're regretting it now. Istra says, I've read a few Frank O'Connor short stories based on your recommendation. I was blown away with each story. Now you made me curious about Guy de Maupassant. How I wish that there were a big, fat, new translation of the complete stories of Guy de Maupassant. How wonderful that would be. He hasn't been revisited in English in 50 years, maybe more than that. Gandhi says, have you met the love of your life? I don't believe in such a thing. Damien says, thoughts on Noam Chomsky's involvement with Epstein. Is he an intellectual grifter? I don't believe he's an intellectual grifter, but the more I see of even the tiny, keep in mind, we have 15% of the Epstein files. And that's all we're ever going to see. But the more I read into the details of those millions of documents, the more I believe that the standard trope that people say on chatting news networks, that just because your name is in the Epstein files doesn't mean you're guilty. That is true. But if you are in the Epstein files associating with Jeffrey Epstein, you are guilty. So Noam Chomsky, there's no way that he didn't know what was happening. I know Jeffrey, the type of monster that he was. I didn't know him, but I know the type of monster that he was. And part of the profanity is that he would want his pet intellectuals to know. He wouldn't want them to be ignorant of what he was doing. That's the whole point. I'm going to tell you this incredibly awe-inspiringly horrible thing, and you're still going to want my largesse. You're going to overlook it for my largesse. That would have been part of it. So Chomsky knew. We'll never know. He can't speak, so we'll never know. Ann Sampson says, who do you think is the best forgotten or underrated woman author of the 20th century? Oh, God. No idea, really. I'm tempted. I mean, they've all had their day. They've all had a vogue. They've had books and whatnot. But underrated or forgotten, I'm tempted to say Angela Thurkel, but I don't know. That's a big question. Thomas says, if I can locate my oversized 1970s Legion with Mordrew reprints, can I send it to you? I have it. What are you talking about? You could consider it a gift in lieu of any Steve Blatter treatment future to GoFundMe campaign. The older ones. No. What, are you crazy? Of course I have my copies. Very nice of you, but I have them. There's no reason to send them. Although I would love it if DC would do one of these oversized facsimile reprints of any of those Legion things. There were 3 of them. I would love it. Mine are falling apart. KHOD says, can't sleep, may as well stay here for a while. This will help you to go to sleep, definitely. Lady Nottingham says, what's a dude bro? I'm not from America. It's a particular subset of reader and also society. I guarantee that wherever you're from, you have them too. These famously disaffected, aimless young men. In my specific world of my channel, it involves the literature that they love and venerate. Big, stupid monkey puzzle books full of gear specifications that practically have a sign over them saying no girls allowed. Oh, the chat jumped again. Good Lord. Jenny Park says sleep is for the weak. Steve, are you a stoic? I am not. California says, speaking of conspiracies, what are your thoughts on Lisa P's A Lie Too Big to Fail? It made me wonder, way more suspicious of Bobby Kennedy's murder than the official report. Well, yeah, the official report is clearly wrong. I won't say that it's a lie, but it's clearly wrong. I had an old friend who was a conspiracy theorist, and he used to get going on a handful of subjects. And he was brilliant on the Jonestown Massacre. Brilliant. But he's also brilliant on RFK and pointed out things that are just true. There are so many problems with the story. I have a few books on it. I don't have A Lie Too Big to Fail. I don't have a copy of it. I wish I did. Cosmic A says, I'm curious, how good or bad was fan fiction pre-internet? It was pretty bad. It's just as bad now, but it was pretty bad. California says, what is the best book about the history of New York City? Probably Gotham. That great big thing, Gotham. That was really, really good. Better with New York City, you're better off getting a book about a specific period than just one huge subject. Even Gotham is just about really one huge period or one specific period. Morgan said, like, for instance, what's that book? The Transformation of the World. Whoa, and there's another one too. There was another one about Jazz Age New York that was wonderful. Really, I don't know of any big sweeping soup to nuts history of New York that is as good as the compartmentalized ones. Morgan says, Steve, what is the event / illness Trump had that you keep referring to? I've looked widely for it and expectedly always find no information. What is this mysterious malady? Can any of you guess? Can anybody tell me what would stop you from growing hair on your body and also make you infertile? Any guesses? It was widely known in New York at the time. He would completely deny it. And the last person who had actual written medical evidence of it is currently buried on his golf course and was murdered by his command. Uh, uh, Ethan says, any recommendations for fiction written as journal entries? There are quite a few, like Music for Dolphins is YA, but it's still wonderful, about a girl who's raised by a pod of dolphins and then taken away from them. But there are lots of others. Martin says, do you ever write yourself as a character in Star Trek fan fiction? No. California says, young Brando had magnetic charisma. Yeah, it's true, but he wasn't good looking. He did have a magnetic charisma, but he wasn't good looking. ADHD reader says, this might be a tasteless question, but what do you think would happen if Trump was to die in office? Trump is going to die in office in 2047. And the office will be given to, I would guess, Barron Trump. I don't really think. I think it will probably be given to Barron Trump. That is what MAGA wants. And Barron Trump, thanks to medical interventions and the genetics of his family, will run the country for nearly a century. By the time he actually dies in the residence of the West Wing, which will be then called the Trump House, no one in America will even remember what it was like to be free. They won't remember it at all. The oldest person won't remember it. Serendipity says, Steve, what do you think of Walker Percy's work? I don't particularly like it. I know that I should, but I don't. Michael Lombardo says, you should read aloud the first page of the Half His Age book. Could I get away with reading aloud a page of a book? I could, right? That's surely standard use, is one page. Morgan says, Newman wouldn't be in the top 100. Now you're smoking. I'm sure he's known to be in the very upper realms, surely. He has far more striking in his prime than Perkins or Redford, at least. I don't think so. I'm not sure that you're picturing Perkins and Redford in their prime. That might be the problem. And there are others. I mean, now it wouldn't be Newman for me. Maybe it's just a personal taste thing. Cosmic Ace says, Steve, that old giant collection of Guy de Maupassant stories is still out of print, sadly. I've never seen it in used books. No, I haven't either. California says, I know this was in the past stream, but you've recommended a math YouTube channel. I'm having trouble remembering the name of the channel. Me too. Me too. I don't remember it either. There was a channel that did an explanation of the Riemann hypothesis, and the explanation was gorgeous. It was itself as beautiful as a Renaissance painting. I didn't understand a word of it. And I still found it absolutely hypnotizing. And I don't remember the name of the channel. There are a million channels out there about the Riemann hypothesis. That's the way to find it, though. If you look for explanations of the Riemann hypothesis, you're going to find a whole bunch of videos on it. And you don't even need to ask me, is this the right one? Just watch them on your own. One of them is so much more breathtakingly beautiful than the others that'll be the one. Steve, how smart was Epstein really? Was he really? The chat jumped again, and I don't know your name. Your name is in Hebrew. Let's find that. It should be easy to find. Where are you? Sorry about this, people. I don't know why BookTube does this. How smart was Epstein really? Was he really some Was he really some financial genius? He was a moron. That's obvious from his correspondence. He was a moron, and he wasn't a financial genius. No. California says finding out Stephen Hawkins was involved in the Epstein file was pretty heartbreaking. Right, and he wasn't just mentioned. Like David K. Johnston is mentioned. He wasn't involved. The mentions show that he was just mentioned. He wasn't involved. Barack Obama is mentioned, but he's not involved. Hawking was, and so he knew. He might not have been able to do anything, but he was told. That was part of Epstein, was not just to do these horrible things, but to make sure that your pets knew you were doing it. Uh, California says, do you enjoy James Baldwin? I do. Hegasander says, what a great irony. The man praised for his linguistics is now mute. One could see the poetic justice in it. Well, if he's guilty and if he knew about Epstein, and he certainly did, and didn't do anything about it, didn't even break ties with the man, then he is guilty. Well, I mean, his fate right now is horrifying. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. He knows, I'm sure he knows that the world has turned on his reputation. I'm sure he knows that the final act of his life, because he'll die this year, is Jeffrey Epstein. Not any of his work, not any of his speaking engagements, nothing like that. It's Epstein. I'm sure, unless his family has just shielded him from that, I'm sure he knows that. And it must be a horrible, horrible fate to know that and not be able to defend yourself. But if he knew about Epstein, then he deserves that fate. That reading guy is responding to Cosmic Gaze. And Cosmic Gaze is responding back to him. So we have a Starfleet Academy lovers triangle developing here. Well, I'm right here. Scott says, I'm reading John Buchan and Le Carré for the first time, and at the same time, do you prefer the fun, improbable espionage books, also Fleming, or the gritty, heavy ones? I love them both. If they're done, I mean, though Buchan and Le Carré are both great. If they're done that well, then I don't care at all. Steve, it is 3 a.m. here. I need to sleep. Thank you very much for this. Have an amazing time. Nice of you to be here. Right. Recyclist says, found a large collection of Ernest Thompson Seton stories and art recently. I was wondering what you thought of him. I generally like him. He's a little bit too free with a gun, but I generally like him. And a big collection that had not only stories, but also lots of illustrations. I would love to find something like that. I would buy something like that. Richard Fuller says, Steve, how do you keep abreast of the news? I watch it all year, all day long. Morgan says Trump Klinefelter. Kay Napolo says, do you have a favorite guidebook on Boston? Something like the Blue Guide to New York? Not really. No. Well, not specifically. Hidden Gardens of Beacon Hill is not really a guidebook. You can't go and look at those things. I've been in every one of them, but you can't go and look at them. Architectural Guide to Boston by... Not really, no. That reading guy says, oh, no, the chat jumped. There we go. What's your favorite movie or stage version of Macbeth? I saw a stage version. I couldn't tell you. I saw a stage version in the 1980s in London. That was wonderful. I could not tell you who was in it. I thought it was really, I've never seen a version that I liked quite as much. I just realized that was a car revving its engine out there. I just realized how rare a sound that is. There's been no traffic at all. The road has not even been plowed. Let's see here. KHOD says, since you've read every book ever written at least twice, I never said that. Is there any good book on the history of the city of Liverpool that you know? I do not. California says, is the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson worth reading? I would have thought no, but BookTube changed my mind on it, sent me back to it, and it is awful. It's a lot more interesting and playful than I thought, so maybe so. If it's calling to you, it's definitely worth it. Cosmic Aces say, is there a genre of fiction that annoys you more than autofiction? No. J. Scott Phillips says, I'm late. What have I missed? Oh my God, we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Mostly you. Serendipity Walpole says, Steve, do you like the Popol Vuh? I know you've read it. I don't like it. No. The chat jumped again. Good Lord. Jenny Park says, hey, Scotty, does this mean we get an obligatory blob watch now that you're here? Well, it doesn't count if you ask. He has to ask. That reading guy says, do you keep an Oxford World's Classic? Keep up on new Oxford World Classics. They are publishing new translation of Thomas Mann's major novels this year. I did not know that. I don't keep up on them. I don't have a contact with them either. I might have to buy them. Istra says, good night, Steve. Glad to have caught you live. Well, they're dropping like flies over there in the chat. California says, thanks for the recommendation of Grant by Jean Smart. Really good book. Morgan says, did you see the second season of The Night Manager? So banal. I did not. Jonathan says, are you watching the JFK Jr. show, Steve? I am not. That reading guy says, now that you are a sexy influencer on Substack, do you read other people on the platform? Any recommendations? I do not. Morgan says, who do you think is the most intelligent British politician in your opinion? in the past 200 years. Okay. I was almost thinking that was an answerable question. The 200 years is not answerable. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg, probably. Is, uh, Cosmic Ace says, Steve, what do you think happened to Ambrose Bierce? I had nothing to do with it. Gandhi, where did you go? There we go. Biden's undoing was his "we finally beat Medicare" comment during the debate. What would be Trump's? No, I disagree. It wasn't a comment during the debate that was his undoing. It was the fact that he was a staggering, incoherent old man lost in Central Park. It wasn't one comment like Gerald Ford saying I'm unaware of any Russian influence in Poland or anything like that. No, it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't one specific comment. It was the debate where you had a fascistic blowhard, but the other guy was not there at all. It was there won't be any undoing for Trump at all. I mean, in 45 minutes, he's going to tell a 3-hour-long tissue of North Korea style lies. It's not going to have any effect on him at all. Serendipity says, Steve, you chose The Mending of Broken Bones as one of the best fiction books of last year. Is it a mind-blowing as 99 Variations on a Proof? I liked it a lot. It wasn't to me, 99 Variations on a Proof is right over there, and I keep going back to that book. So I don't know about individual merit, but the one definitely has a stronger hold on me than the other. California says, "What do you think of British Columbia? Are there parts of it that are jaw-droppingly beautiful?" I agree completely. ADH Reader says, "What is it about autofiction that annoys you? I've heard mentions, but not the full rumble. It's lazy. That's the main thing that annoys me about it. It's just incredibly lazy." J. Scott Phillips says, "Steve, could Jenny have a blob watch, please? You're ever the gentleman." All right. Well, blob watch is going to be pretty disappointing for Boston because we just had the blizzard of 26. And yet we are getting more snow tomorrow. It's apparently going to be just a little dusting, but that will definitely be visible. Oh, right. The iPad is set up a little differently, but we can still find it. So there's going to be a little storm. Yeah, there it is. It's over the Great Lakes now. There's a little storm. That thing right there is headed for Boston tomorrow, and will be that will be snow here tomorrow. No way to avoid it. See, it's a whole sweep, so there's no way that it's going to go anywhere else. But apart from that, you've got these remnants of the massive storm that hit the West Coast. But other than that, everything's quiet, as well it should be. I don't want any more snow. Let's see here. That reading guy says you could play the State of the Union on your iPad and provide live commentary. Try to keep spitting rage to a minimum. Well, it's all going to be lies, which is the type of thing you stereotypically say when someone is going to tell a lot of lies. You say, it's just going to be all lies. But I mean, literally, every single thing he says is going to be a lie. Every single thing, an easily disprovable lie, which has never happened before. And that's going to happen. Let's see here. Michael Lombardo says, still 150 folks here. That's incredible. California, there are channels that have 10,000, that have 50,000 subscribers, 60,000 can't do that. What is it? What's wrong with you people? California says, who do you think has the greatest general in the United States in the U.S. Civil War, and why is it George Thomas? Am I not duty bound to stick up for fighting Joe Hooker? Jenny Park says, I like blob watches. You guys get far more interesting weather than we do. Yeah, it's a big country, very active. You got the 2 mountain ranges on either end. That tends to make things a little interesting. We're going to get snow. I don't think we're going to get much. I hope not. Morgan says, I'm surprised by the Mog answer. Why do you say it's him? Well, because I've listened to a lot of them. Most of them are morons. He's not a moron. I'm not praising him at all. But you said the question was most intelligent. I think he's easily the most intelligent. Richard says, are you still learning Japanese? I didn't know that I started. Robert Song Reeds left without me. He left me at the dock, waving my handkerchief. California says, recommended biography of Charles de Gaulle. Recommended by me? Are you asking me for a recommendation? It'd be A Certain Idea of France. It's really, really good. The best de Gaulle biography that I've read. That reading guy says, what are you reading tonight? Any new releases? Yes, there's got to be a new release. I'm rereading this because this author has a new. There's a new book coming out. I don't think it's translated by Molly Ringwald. He has a new book. You gotta have something for the gays. And he has a new book I think called The Sun Boy. I'm getting a copy soon, and I don't think I remember this thing well enough, so I'm going to reread that. I'm gonna have an absolute delight with these old Asimov science fiction from what fans of the magazine refer to as the apostrophe era, when there was still an apostrophe. I'm going to reread a whole bunch of stuff in here, fiction, not the book columns. But this is a new release, The Violet Hour, a novel about an artist. The publicists have been on to me wanting to know what I think of it, and I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious that I haven't read it, so that'll be on the list. And I am rereading Agent in Place by Helen McInnes. So that's a reread, but that's been long enough so that'll feel new. John O'Connell says, I disagree. Thad comment from Biden was a spotlight of his stumbling around. I was watching. It was the overall effect. It wasn't just one comment. J. Scott Phillips says, we had a great series of blobs last week, but California is usually blob free. Yeah, you had history making blobs last week. Richard Fuller says, does the bell jar count as auto fiction? It certainly does. Pat Johnson says, do you like Pat Barker's Regeneration trilogy? I don't. No. Cosmic A says, is Mercy Otis Warren remembered in Massachusetts today? Of course not. J. Scott Phillips says, Steve, I'm wondering how you feel about Donovan's Reef. What's that, Grandpa? Old people, I tell you. Michael Lombardo says, did you get during the blizzard? Did I get what during the blizzard? I barely went out at all. The bean did not want to go out in this weather. So we barely went out at all. I just stayed in. I can't shovel. No sense even thinking about it. I might want to, but I can't. So we just rode it out. I was worried that we would lose power, and we didn't lose power. That reading guy says we need a bean watch now. I don't know if you're going to be able to see her. She's still over on the chair, but she's wedged out of the corner there. See, there you go. California says, is there a good English translation of Romance of the Three Kingdoms? Yeah, isn't there? There was one. I don't know that it's in print anymore. I saw it from Tuttle. No, Tuttle must still have it in print, and it was pretty good. ADHD Reader says the best thing would be a bean watch with Sean Bean reading poetry. David Sloan says, hi, Steve. Do you think any 20th century writer rivals Virginia Woolf? Quite a few of them rival her. Yeah. California says, Steve, streams need to be a weekly release at minimum. Maybe every day. Karen says, yes to Raj Quartet. How interesting. I would never have thought of that. What an idea. Nothing wrong with it, right? We can be ambitious on this channel. I don't want any new subscribers. I don't want any new viewers. I have all of you. I don't need anything else. So we can do whatever we want. It's a very nice feeling. So many booktubers, so many YouTubers would look at that and think, oh, no, it would lose me. It'd tank for readers. It'd tank for viewers. The videos would perform poorly. So many people limited by that. I'm so glad I'm not like that. I'm just so glad of that. Serendipity says, Steve, do you like origami? Did you ever read a good book about it? I've never read a good book about it, and I don't know how to do it. I barely have any sense of touch, so I'm pretty sure I would stink at it. Cosmic Ace, is it just me, or is Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan books rarely in used bookstores? I find it sad, to be honest. Yeah, that old Black Spine Ballantine run, for instance, is largely gone. I almost bought it. The Brattle got a huge number of them in February, at the beginning of February. And I almost got them all. I had the whole stack in my arm at $5 a piece. And I think it was a Withering Look from Christopher Russell that made me think, oh, no, don't do that. It's a waste of time. You have the ebooks. You don't need these. So I put them back. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs mass market paperbacks at the Brattle right now. Not just those Black Spine ones, but earlier ones as well, of both John Carter and Tarzan. Unless somebody bought them all. Morgan says, have you read much about Pakistan's founder, Jinnah? What do you think of him overall? I've read nothing. That reading guy says, where does the phrase, you got to have something for the gays, come from? It's your version of hope you're doing well. It has an origin. It's an author that I've mentioned on this channel. Scott Jones says, with those mountains of snow on the ground, Are any grocery delivery services able to get through to folks? I know everyone should have stocked up beforehand, but still, I haven't actually tried. I'll be curious to know. I won't try. Tomorrow is going to be snowing lightly, but I think I wouldn't want drivers out there on my account. I have seen drivers on the road, not yesterday. Yesterday was pure emergency stuff. There was nobody out. Uh, I don't know. I think I will hold off until the mountains have evaporated a little. I think that will happen. We are headed for some 50-degree days. Uh, Morgan says, last time I asked you the enraging question of Eastwood versus Wayne as actors. Was that you? It still stings. Today I ask who wins in a bare knuckle brawl in their primes. Between the two of them, Eastwood. That reading guy says, wait, who rivals Virginia Woolf? Lawrence of Arabia? Lawrence of Arabia, sure. Muriel Spark. Gore Vidal at the peak of his powers. There's one I'm forgetting. Well, there are a number of people I'm forgetting. There are a whole bunch of people. Rivals, sure. ADHD. Oh, no, the chat jumped again. Boy, the chat's jumping more than usual. ADHD Reader says, we definitely need more Stevestream, mostly so I can sell you French-Canadian literature. Ingrid Fritz says, hi, Steve. You scared me with that thumbnail. Yeah. Morgan says, we may die before you. 28 is a bit young. If you don't keep gaining viewers, then you would run out. Growth is healthy. That reading guy says, I'd rather a Steve read along of Geoffrey of Tours or Bede. That'll get the rating. Well, if I were to do a read aloud of either one of them, it would, of course, be my own translation, especially Bede. Gandhi says, if you found yourself on death row heading to the chamber, what would be your last meal? Wine and calzones. What difference would it make? I don't understand questions like this. I wouldn't care at all. Coldifornia says, is Plutarch's Lives easily accessible? It is. I have heard it praised endlessly, but I'm afraid my surface level knowledge of Greek, Roman figures. Do I need to brush up on anything beforehand? Not really, no. Plutarch's Lives just as one big book, as the book that he envisioned. Probably don't do that. Forever, for its whole history, editors have plucked lives out of it and run them together. So if, for instance, Oxford World Classics does a few books on, like, for instance, the standout Roman lives or the standout Greek lives, and those Oxford volumes will have lots of footnotes. That'll be fine. That'll suit you just fine. You'll get all the famous names. You won't get any of the non-famous names, and you won't get any of the comparative essays that Plutarch did and that he wanted to be included. You won't get any of that. And if you fall in love with Plutarch, as I hope you do, then you'll go back to the hall of it. Kay Napolo says, are you going to do an in-depth interview with Criminali now that he has finished reading all of your favorite authors, Stephen King? I doubt that Ollie would be up for it. Steve Bronstein says, it was music to my ears when you mentioned you hate the way Scott Galloway talks. My wife called me out for being a snob when I told her the same thing recently. It's awful. It's awful. Quite apart from the content of what he says. It's just awful. It's not as bad as David Frum, but it's pretty bad. It's because I can't help but read it as contempt for his listeners. And that drives me crazy. That kind of condescension drives me crazy. I would never do that to you. Morgan says, it was interesting to me that Christopher Lee played Ali Jinnah, then went on to say that it was the best role of his career when he got older. Did he say that? Well, he said that about a lot of roles. Michael Lombardo says, no Steve videos yesterday because the studio couldn't make it. The crew couldn't make it to Hyde Cottage. Yeah, yesterday was the calm after the storm. It was unbelievable. Must read more. It says, I thought of doing a read aloud of Raiders of the Deep by Lowell Thomas, but all the German and French names sort of scared me off. My French is terrible. Nick Collard says, how do you have so much energy? Clean living, son. David Zalone says, I've been loving your Genesis read through. The parataxis in the King James Bible is almost rivals that of Cormac McCarthy. Wink, wink. I do have fun. Even my enemies on BookTube would have to admit that. Zach says, thoughts on David Bentley Hart? He's brilliant. Barcode says, hi, Steve. What do you think about John Crowley's Egypt tetralogy? I love it. Serendipity says, Steve, are you looking forward to Taylor Sheridan's adaptation of S.G. Gwynn's Empire of the Summer Moon? It's centered on Connor Parker. The Comanches are really interesting to learn about. I don't know that I'm looking forward to the adaptation, but I agree the book is wonderful. ADHD Reader is responding to Jack Simpson. Richard Phillips says, how often do you listen to music? Do you have a favorite composer? John Philip Sousa, all the time. I listen to music quite a bit, but it's all Italian Baroque. All of it is Italian Baroque, and not the famous names. The one that, if you know Locatelli, for instance, not him, his instructor or his cousin. They're all on YouTube, and they go on endlessly for free because no one cares about them. And I love them. I think they're lovely. Basically every Baroque Venetian composer, basically all of them. That reading guy says, oh my God, you are killing me with all these original translations you might read aloud. Will it ever happen? Pinky promise. Bede? Homer? I have many plans for this channel. Uh, TMT says, does untreated syphilis explain Eric Trump? I don't know what explains Eric Trump. Serendipity says, Christopher Lee's life was so amazing. Yeah, I agree. I love what was the anecdote where some director asked him to tell stories about his most clandestine operations during World War II, and Christopher Lee leaned into him and said, can you keep a secret? And the director said yes, and Christopher Lee said, so can I. I don't know if that's true, but I love the story. California says, where should I start with John Dryden? I've read Shakespeare and Milton, so I'm familiar with Jacobean English for the most part. Why do you want to start John Dryden? Is it because of me? Or are you actually interested? I'd start with the poetry, certainly, before we go anywhere else. Scott Jones says, I love Tom Hanks' story of why Eastwood as a director didn't yell action. Loud directors usually just spook horses on their earlier Westerns. Director Eastwood just said, go ahead. Cosmic A says, Steve, how do you think some of Livy's writings got lost? Do you think later Roman enemies might have destroyed them? It certainly wasn't me. If you're looking to pin this on me, look elsewhere. Stale Proustian Madeline says, what's your favorite Quentin Crisp book? I don't know that I have a favorite Quentin Crisp book. Good Lord. Steve Bronchi says, you may completely disown Hassan Piker, but did you happen to catch the recent debate between him and the MAGA parents who have a podcast with their children? I saw bits and pieces of it. I really should see the whole thing, although I don't know what the point is with the necessary conversation parents. I don't know what the point is. The father has already said that he would gladly watch the execution of his own children. So I don't understand the point of anything after that. I know there are ratings, there's money, there's AdSense to be had, but you don't talk to someone after that, whether they're your parent or not. You don't talk to them after that, and I don't understand the point. Once someone is willing to say that, what's the point of talking about anything else? They're not human anymore. But maybe I should watch the whole thing. Steve Ronstein says, have you listened to any Vosh lately? If so, has he grown on you at all? No, I'm not gonna give clicks to someone who traffics in child porn. That's revolting. That's absolutely revolting. It means you are no longer acceptable in public society. It's not, oh yeah, he has this take on Palestine, and oh yeah, he has this open folder of child pornography on his desktop, and oh yeah, he has this take on the Iran flotilla. I don't understand that part of the 21st century where you can't do anything bad enough for people to stop patronizing you. That I don't understand at all. No, I don't. He's not going to grow on me. Once I knew that about him, I stopped paying any attention to him. That reading guy says, just read Ender's Game and loved it. Oh yeah, good for you. Are the rest of the books in the series worth reading? They are, very much so. And also Prentice Alvin, The Tales of Alvin Maker. Nick Collard says, I know I'm late watching Pride and Prejudice 2005, but I'm alone in thinking it's the best movie ever made. It's not the best movie ever made, but it is really good. Morgan says, yeah, Lee did say that about Jenna pretty adamantly and at length in press conference. I don't believe it. Actors are dumb. They're barnyard animals. I think on any random Thursday, his idea of his favorite role would have been different. Morgan says, oh, wait, you said that already. That reading guy, your plans for this channel die at the end of the year. Next year, you'll be too busy doing your 2027 library tour. This is still a sore spot with you, isn't it? It's a sore spot with that reading guy that I don't ever follow through on my library tours. I start nice and strong, and then I stop. And I agree. That is really annoying. ADHD Reader says, everything I learned about Christopher Lee made me love him, including his metal music inclination. What's your favorite movie of his? Well, I'm going to say Lord of the Rings. I mean, I know that he isn't doing much in the Peter Jackson trilogy, but I still enjoyed him in that immensely. Although he was also really good in Gremlins 2, where he comes to the horrifying realization that some things just shouldn't be cloned. Ingrid Fitz says, "Did you watch any of the Olympics? My husband watches it all, including curling. I did not watch any of the Olympics. No." Zach Simpson says, "What Arabic-speaking country have you been to? Did you find the most interesting as an experience?" Most interesting, probably Saudi Arabia. Colombian Thunder says, "Starting Dune for the first time, but I'm itching to start Hyperion." Wow, good lord, you haven't read either? Wow, you've got a lot of great reading in store, don't you? Serendipity says, "So many winter sports are dangerous but seem fun as well. Skeleton is one." Michael Lombardo says, "Any picks for the Oscars?" No, I don't have any picks for the Oscars. David Sloan says, "Thoughts on Neuromancer and Gibson's work in general?" I love it, almost all of it, and Neuromancer is great. Scott Jones says, "I've got a good idea. Some guy on YouTube got better view numbers than SF Academy episode 1 with a live stream of a Spock doll." Yes, Gary at Nerdrotic. "I bet you can get better numbers than SOTU address by streaming Frida." That was something. That was well played on his part. That reading guy says, "Have you met any actors smarter than a barnyard animal? Barnyard animals can be pretty smart." I always feel sorry saying that because you're right. Barnyard animals can be pretty smart. I am actually denigrating them when I compare them to Hollywood actors. I have met almost no Hollywood actors that could hold a thought in their head for more than 1 minute. And more frightening, they don't have any identity. They don't actually have any fixed idea of who they are, which is terrifying when you see it up close. Uh, Almost none. I've known 4, and they were all really dumb. Uh, Ann Sampson says, "Can you repeat the name of the underrated female author? I missed it." Uh, who did I say? Angela Thirkell, Thirkell. I'm pretty sure I said her. That reading guy says, "Do you actually think The King of Elfland's Daughter is better than Lord of the Rings?" Not really, no. Probably not better. It's more elegantly written. Colombian Thunder says, "I would have figured Steve a progressive doom metal connoisseur." Well, my sense of hearing is not vestigial like yours is. Uh, Cosmic A says, "Steve, how do you feel about extreme sports like caving, cave diving, and free soloing?" Well, I love them because there's a really good chance that the practitioner will die on camera. I think they're insane otherwise. But for entertainment value, there's always that high chance. Joe's Book and Movie Corner. Speaking of Christopher Lee, do you have a favorite Hammer horror movie? No, I don't. KHOD says, "What is your opinion of Peter Watts planning on reading some of his work later this year?" I don't have any strong opinion on him. That's interesting that you would plan to read his work. That reading guy says, "Whatever happened to David Murphy? Does he still exist?" He does still exist. Yes. Colombian Thunders, honestly, I'm pretty new reader and slow one at that. So there's a lot I haven't read, unfortunately. I also have too many hobbies. Time is unfair. California says, "What's your favorite Alec Guinness movie?" Does it have to be a movie? Can it be his George Smiley things on TV? Does it have to be a movie? Ricky Jarvis says, "Gremlins 2 is really funny and interesting movie. Joe Dante has no qualms about making fun of the first Gremlins movie in it, which he also directed." Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be funny. And I don't know why. I just wasn't. And it was really, really good. Uh, Morgan says, "Smartest Hollywood actor you've ever read about, seen, speak, given the rarity?" Probably Richard Burton. Uh, Richard Fuller says, I have a very dog reactive dog. Should I continue taking her on low traffic trails or bring her to Hyde Cottage so you can talk her through her problems?" You ideally you would like to get her not to be so dog reactive. There are probably all sorts of training methods that are on YouTube that you might be able to follow where you can do that. Uh, Karen says, "You can't credit Tilda Swinton with a brain." Remove the question mark. You can't credit Tilda Swinton with a brain. Uh, Michael Lombardo says, "Have the spring bookings begun filling up at Hyde Cottage?" Well, I would like that to happen. Very much so. Apparently, I smell. Oh, the baby is got a little baby activity over there. Oh, she's making a bed. I would like the spring bookings to start at Hyde Cottage. That would be great. Birdell says, "This is my 3rd year spending the first part of my year reading through your recommendations from the previous. So good as always." Well, thank you. My recommendations mean a lot. I put a lot of work into them. I stand by them. There is no better recommender of books than me. Hega Sander says, what book do you recommend on the Ottoman Empire? It's right away. I pay for it right away. I would say Lord Kinross, The Ottoman Centuries, is a good place to start. And then from there, he mentions enough books so to get you going from there. Nick Collard says, think back. Have you sandboarded the dunes on Lake Michigan's eastern shore? No. Must Read More says, you were never tempted to climb Everest. Just reread Into Thin Air about to read Edmund Hillary's autobiography. Afraid I'm catching Everest fever. Well, it's easy to do Everest now. There are old tour packages. People in wheelchairs get to the top. I was not tempted to summit Everest. I did visit, but I wasn't tempted to go all the way. No. That reading guy says, why do you connect better with beagles than other dogs? No idea. ADHD reader says, what of Cillian Murphy? He's a big reader. Is he indeed? Flora should be reading. Says, Steve, very glad I caught the chat. I wanted to ask you, how does one stop regretting and dwelling on clumsy or foolish things one says in conversations? You were able to state your thoughts so well. Yeah, I don't know that I would be the one to answer, because I clumsy or foolish things I tend not to say in conversation. I don't know, and also regret is also a waste of time. So I don't know that I'd be the one to answer the question. If they bother you, I would definitely work on not doing it. Cultivate more silence in conversation. Scott Jones says, Guinness is Smiley versus Oldman Smiley. I thought, though I love Oldman, I got to say Guinness, of course. Guinness. California says, is Steve Runciman's series on the Crusades worth reading? Very much so. That reading guy says, how many mountains have you climbed? Quite a few. If you mean summit, quite a few. More than I wanted to. Always at the egging of other friends. Morgan says, Burton is a good answer. What about O'Toole or Viggo Mortensen? The latter always strikes me as thoughtful and the former very quick. I can't. I'm under self-restriction now not to compare them to barnyard animals, but preschoolers maybe would be the good thing to say. Mr. Francis Clare. I agree with Scott Jones. Guinness is Smiley wins. David Sloan says, is Cillian Murphy a big reader? If Cillian Murphy is a big reader, Steve is Rapunzel. I agree. I don't want to be harsh on these people. I love their work. ADHD reader, Mortensen has to be your favorite above all else, Steve. He is Aragorn after all. Well, my favorite what? Actor? He's not my favorite actor. That reading guy says, why do you say regret is a waste of time? Well, there's nothing you can do about it. You can change the behavior that caused it, but feeling it, I mean, it's unavoidable. Humans do feel it, but it's a waste of time. It eats away at you to no good at all. You can't change the past. It's useful as a lesson. It's useful as a school. Make sure not to do the things that you are going to regret, because there's nothing you can do about regret. It just sits there like a stone. It comes to you at your weakest moments. It's always strong. It's always there. So you have to make sure you don't do the things you're going to regret. You have to stop doing them. That reading guy's back. What would you compare writers to? Twitchy neurotics. Morgan says, how often do you eat chocolate? More often than I should, since it's worthless food. TMT says, recently watched Sweet Smell of Success for the first time. No throwaway dialogue. A great watch. Do you enjoy Burt Lancaster? I do. California says, I bet you are very good at Scrabble. Not really. I don't have much practice. Ricky Jervis says, Michael K. Vaughan is also great at recommending books. I recently read House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne upon his recommendation. Pretty good read. No giant toads, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. It's a weird recommendation. Although I've recommended that book too. But he is really good at it. Miss M. Francis Clare is responding to someone else. Okay. And Morgan says, have you seen Lancaster in The Swimmer? Have I seen Burt Lancaster in The Swimmer? Is that what you're asking? Sure, you don't want to ask me if I've read the story. That film felt like a real psychedelic daze. Very interesting concept. David Hume says, have you given anything up for Lent? No, I don't believe in goblins. Flora should be reading says, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I try to work on being more silent, but I just agonize a lot on certain conversations. I wish I could go back in time and fix things. Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. one of the best ways, if you're worried about that sort of thing, I've known some people who were. To my mind, they were always overwearing. It was always not as bad as they thought. But it's always a good idea in conversation anyway to listen more than you speak and to ask questions, genuine questions, as opposed to stating things. Morgan says, you're okay. You're responding to someone else. California says, what were your impressions of Lisbon? My impressions of Lisbon were that I was in with a group of people, beautiful, beautiful people, who were all about the nightlife. And that was something. It was exhausting. TMT says, fun fact, President Pierce died sharing rooms with Nathaniel Hawthorne. Morgan says, do you ever still find yourself looking up words or not knowing the meaning of them? Not really, no. That reading guy says, will you be reading any Mammoth books for March? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm going to have a regular to-do for March of the Mammoths. I think I might concentrate on the Mammoths in the little book room. So it'd all be rereading. Although I haven't checked yet the listings to see if there are any actual Mammoths of interest to me coming out from new releases in March. I bet there are. That's right about when they start up again. Scott Jones says, when you say something clumsy, I recommend making a self-deprecating joke. People like those who can laugh at themselves, take the sting right out of the embarrassment. Yeah, good idea. ADHD reader says, may be an illegal question here, so bear in mind, have you ever taken anything that brought your reading to new heights? Taken anything? You mean a drug? No. No. Nothing does that. There are things that create that illusion, but nothing actually does that. Flora should be reading says, that's great advice. Thank you. Asking questions always makes the conversation more interesting. Have you watched the latest Frankenstein film adaptation, and what did you think of it? I watched it. It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. I thought it was going to be the worst Jacob Elordi movie that I watched this year. I saw Wuthering Heights. That reading guy says, will you reread Genji? That's in the little book room. Yeah, but it's in the little book room, but I've read Genji enough. There are some Mammoths in there. I've read enough for now. There's some Mammoths in there that I haven't touched in a long time. They would come first. Richard Fuller says, what's your favorite scene from Julius Caesar? My favorite scene from Julius Caesar. There's a great one that's at the end when Brutus and Casca are falling out, and Casca just can't believe his eyes. He can't believe his ears. How on earth are you talking to me this way? But I think my favorite one is probably the first one with Brutus and Casca, where Brutus is being urged to remember the legacy of his family and revolt against this one man who doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus. That is lovely. I think it's just what a way to start a play after you're done with the Flavius and Marana part, with the yelling, the jokes about the crowd. That's a way to warm people up. The jokes with the cobbler and the mender of souls and whatnot. That's a way to get the audience all settled and laughing and happy. Then you've got the first real scene where Caesar has not appeared yet. That's probably my favorite. M. Francis Clare, did David Murphy reorganize the little book room? No, he started to, but he didn't actually finish before the wine and calzones were calling. Morgan says, do you find the idiocy of actors rule applies to musicians equally or at all? I don't know enough about musicians to know. Ifridger, I finally got around to reading Startide Rising after hearing you recommend it for years. It was remarkable. Thanks. It's amazing. Flora should be reading. Scott Jones is responding to Scott Jones. Colombian Thunder says Jacob Elordi might just take the crown for the newest, dumbest actor. Not to be mean. Oh my God. It would be tough to take it from him. Tough. And then you've got Jack Edwards with 5 pounds of product in his hair asking this African gazelle, asking gazelle on the African plain what your favorite books are. While he's there in an unbuttoned Nehru jacket with a shirt unbuttoned to his navel, longing for tobacco. Hasn't read a book in his life. ADHD reader says, what would your number one mammoth fantasy or science fiction? Lord of the Rings can't be it. Well, are you asking me or are you telling me? Mm-hmm. Dahlgren would certainly be up there. California says Oscar Isaac did not do anything in Frankenstein. He is the most interesting character in the book, and he was just there to deliver exposition. It was such a waste. Such a waste. He's better in some scenes of Moon Knight. than he was in Frankenstein. That reading guy says, do you think allergies are real? What causes them? Some of them are real. Yeah, most of the ones in the 21st century are not. What causes most of the ones in the 21st century is a bottomless hunger for attention and to be the center of literally everything at all times. Uh, Morgan says, have you seen No Other Choice? Did you like it? What is No Other Choice? Do I know that? It's not ringing a bell. That reading guy's back. I didn't like the ending to Star Tide Rising. It was very unsatisfactory. You are incorrect. Flora should be reading says Margot Robbie is the latest Wuthering Heights adaptation, is also terribly miscast. Just terribly miscast. Terribly miscast would be the generous thing for her to say. The mean thing would be that she's just terrible. Serendipity says Steve, is Kyoto as beautiful as they say? Parts of it are. Yeah. It's very, very commercialized for tourists, but parts of it are. That reading guy says, is Dahlgren comprehensible? Once you get into it, I think it is. Yeah, you gotta have something for the gays. Uh, Morgan says Jack Edwards is so goddamn empty, so utterly devoid of any content, despite churning it out constantly. Well, he picked a lane. He changed his management. He got a new management team, and they clearly had an idea in mind. We want you on red carpets. We want you interviewing people. We want you to be a celebrity on this YouTube stuff. We want you to be a celebrity. The bookish young guy that everybody thinks is so well read. They did the bookings, so it has now worked. That has now worked, and he wouldn't be the first, good-looking young man, cute young man with tons of product in his hair who did this. Troye Sivan did it 10 years ago. Used BookTube to get where he wanted to be, all the while telling his BookTube audience or his YouTube audience that he loved them themselves and would never leave them. Anyway, that reading guy says, what about people who can die from peanuts or other nuts? Yeah, you dig up your grandmother and I'll dig up your daughter. If it's proven, if it's visible, sure. TMT says, I saw a production of Julius Caesar and the leading young man reminded me so much of Jim J. Bullock. I giggled throughout the whole thing. And Sampson says, LOL, my daughter loves Jacob Elordi. I love Wuthering Heights movie. She hasn't read it though, sadly. No, she wouldn't love the movie if she'd read the book. Steve Ronstein says, I haven't heard about the child pornography Vosh. We'll have to research. Yeah, just openly caught at it on a live stream, as all these people get caught on a live stream, and it didn't affect anything. Well, okay, if that's the way the 21st century wants to be, that's fine, but I am not like that. That changes things for me. If I know that you are a monstrous predator, I don't want to give you my eyeballs anymore. I don't want to do anything about you anymore. Morgan says, No Other Choice is the Korean film from Park Chan-wook about a man who loses his job. No, I definitely don't know what that is. Does it have giant dinosaurs in it? Killer sharks? No. Serendipity says, do you like YouTuber Vsauce? His series Minefield is good. I have never liked him. No, he has that spastic Vine energy that I don't like. Coldifornia says, what's your favorite James Earl Jones movie? Does it have to be a movie? It can't be Will and Grace? James Earl Jones and Karen from Will and Grace is about as great as it gets. That reading guy says, any good movies coming out this year? I haven't seen one yet. I haven't seen a trailer for one yet. What is your least favorite thing about the 21st century? It's going to sound very old manish, but the lack of morality, the lack of Vosh is an excellent example. The fact that there is no moral backbone anymore. And I know perfectly well, there are plenty of people in the United States, 200 million of them in the United States, who would say the reason that's gone is because we don't have that old time religion. I don't agree at all, but I think it's social media that is the culprit, not the lack of religion. But the fact that there are no lines anymore. So MAGA's God looks like he was implicated in child rape. Well, then MAGA adapts to child rape rather than draw a line, and on and on and on, no matter who it is. Anyway, Flora should be reading says, what do you think of Lex, aka Newly Nova, as a booktuber? I've never heard of this. Morgan says, what other actors do you think could have played Lawrence of Arabia in the Lean film, served, if not equaling, O'Toole, it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable in any hands but his. Uh, Hege Sanders says, another Ottoman question. Was the book by Mark David Baer a misbuy or isn't it? I don't know authors that well. What one was that? I don't know authors that well. I'm afraid to use the iPad. I'm afraid I'll lose the chat. That reading guy says, why is social media to blame for the lack of morality? You mean influencer culture? Yeah, it all became about dopamine. It all became about attention, no matter what. So I will harass someone, and that gets me more attention. So I'll harass more people. That gets me more attention. Then I harass someone finally to a point where the police can't ignore it. So I get arrested, but that gets me more attention. So I do more of that. And so you've got people who are breaking the law left, right, and center. You've got people, this clavicular monster doing drugs on camera. And it doesn't lose a single viewer, not a single one. You got Hassan Piker shocking his dog on camera, doesn't lose a single viewer. Uh, uh, ADHD reader says Morgan. Oh, you're someone else. Okay. Michael Lombardo says, have you followed the Blake Lively Justin Baldoni legal battle? I have a little bit, not like the experts. California says, is Eugene V. Debs' collected works worth reading? I would doubt it. Colombian Thunder says, I've only seen The Bone Temple this year, and it might be one of the best movies, the best in the year by the looks of it. The year is pretty anemic. It's pretty anemic. Sebastian says, Steve, what is your opinion of Giga Chad Stephen King? I'm joking, obviously, about him being a Giga Chad. My opinion of Stephen King is well known. From Here to Alpha Centauri, I think he stinks. Serendipity says, which book would you recommend if someone has never read any Edward St. Aubin? Some Luck. Let's start with that. It's incredibly good. It's incredibly, I want to say addictive, although in the context of the book, that's pretty bad. But I would start with that. Sometimes the father-son stuff is laid on with a little too thick a trowel, but Some Luck would be a great place to start, I think. That reading guy says, why are actors so dumb and yet they are genius in their craft? No idea. No idea at all. Maybe the craft attracts dumb people. The chat jumped again. Let's find where you were. Oh God, I don't know. It was that reading guy, right? There we go. Morgan says is responding to ADHD reader. Scott Jones says Godzilla minus zero is due this year. And that one I have to see. That will probably be really good. And you're dead on. It's social media that's flushed the culture down the sewer. Okay, a lot of conversations going on amongst you all. Must read more says, I don't understand the influencer's desire for attention. That's one of my one of my videos could go viral even for good reasons, scares me to my core. Well, it's dopamine addiction. It becomes something that you can't do without, and you'll get it by whatever means necessary, any means necessary. You'll kill yourself. You'll die on camera. You'll kill someone else. All these things have happened and continue to happen. Where you create a warped homunculus culture where going viral is the only thing that matters, no matter how you do it. Morgan says, did you enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? A Cliff Booth-centered sequel will be released this year and is directed by Fincher. Could be good. I did enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, yeah. Heg Sanders says, about morality, even though you haven't a high opinion of Plato, wouldn't his critique of slipping morality of his day be correct comparison with today? No. Serendipity says, Steve, who do you enjoy reading more, Flannery O'Connor or Eudora Welty? This is not like that. This is not Coke versus Pepsi. I don't think of books that way or reading that way. Hege Sanders says, to the cause being a better understanding of and the refutation of the old myths. No idea what that means. Colombian Thunder says, I've once heard it said the dumb actors make the best actors because they're borderline empty vessels. Could very well be. California says, Steve, what do you think about the film The Battle of Algiers? I thought it was a snoozer. Ann Sampson says, what is the best Jane Austen biography? I'm rather fond of Lord Cecil, but Claire Tomalin's is definitely the place to start, I think. He assumes a lot less, or she assumes a lot less familiarity on your part with every last detail of Austen's work, whereas David Cecil assumes that you know the work inside and out. ADHD reader says social media is the ultimate extension of reality TV, the thing it wanted to spawn. That's why executives pushed it so hard. Flora should be reading says, Steve, have you watched A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Is it worth watching? I would like to read the book. It's not worth watching. No. Morgan says, do you have younger siblings? Did you get on well with them as a child? If so, siblings, a little bit of rocky ground there. Not much getting along. Sebastian says, Steve, what did you think of the novel Tender is the Flesh? What's that novel? Remind me of that novel. We have to wrap this up anyway. We've gone on way too long. 10 past the hour. Morgan says, how dare you imply Nicolas Cage isn't a mega mind genius? Repent, Steve. Repent. Yeah, perfect example. Colder says, do you enjoy physical media over streaming? I think there is a great value in collecting DVD and Blu-ray instead of entirely relying on streaming services. There is a great value in collecting them. I don't do it myself because the only media that I have ended up caring about is reading. But there is a great value in collecting DVDs and Blu-rays. Absolutely. Stuff that can't be altered or removed and is in your possession to watch. That is worth having. Serendipity says, Steve, what do you think will happen in Cuba? Probably something along the lines of the Trump hegemony, probably. Hega Sanders says, the comments of mine that was confusing was about the aforementioned comment about the time of Plato. I meant to draw a comparison to his times, not his solution, of course. Mark says, I just came into possession of the Klinger annotated 2-volume set of Sherlock Holmes. I'll see you in about 10 years. What a book, though. Michael Lombardo says, what are the ramifications if when the United States and Iran become a hot zone? They're enormous. They're enormous ramifications. ADHD says, Nicolas Cage is our Lord and Savior. Well, he was really good in Renfield as Dracula. That reading guy says, are you going to start collecting DVDs? No, I don't watch enough. I read and I talk to Frida. Sebastian says, does this mean you won't become a looks-maxing Giga Chad anytime soon? Are you implying that I'm not already? Because that's a good way to get yourself banished, bud. Colderfornia says, what's the best book on the Vietnam War? Stanley Carnow's book is great, but I would also suggest Max Hastings' book. Morgan says, Steve, could be too personal, but you often say you started reading too late. What was that in your teenage years? There are all sorts of different schools of thought as to when that was. All sorts of different scholarly traditions. John O'Connor says State of the Union is starting. Yeah, well, we have to end anyway. This has gone on for a long time. It's been a lot of fun. Morgan says Cage is good in everything. If you didn't like him in something, it was you, not him. Nick Collard says, any opinions on Seventh-day Adventism? It's all right. ADHD says, oh no, you're talking about something else. Sebastian says, Steve, nobody doubts your ravishing good looks. So you appeared to for a minute there. John O'Connell says Hastings' book is excellent. I agree. I think I blurbed on it. Am I not? We should end on that. I think I blurbed on the Hastings book. Flora should be reading says, Steve, since you mentioned clavicular, imagine a Jack Edwards I read Clavicula's favorite books video. I wouldn't put it past him. If he thought that would go viral, he would do it. That reading guy says, what was the best book on the medieval biblical church in West Nigeria in the 18th century? All right, we'll wrap up with that reading guy. This was wonderful. This was a huge amount of fun. I want to thank you all. This went a lot longer than I thought, but these are so much fun. But I do have to stop. I do have to wrap up. I am probably unwisely going to watch the State of the Union, even though it's not the State of the Union. It's all delusional lies, slurrily, sloppily, salivally delivered by a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron rapist. I'm probably going to watch it anyway. It's American history, after all. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up. My videos have posted for today, and also there's CPL Radio Books of the Week. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube. Thank you all so much. Oh my God, Frida, that was so much